Stepping up to the couch, it's Brian, who led the league last season in cracked screens. But with his new athletic case, it looks like that won't be the case. Touchdown, Brian!
Basketball is one of the biggest sports in the world. Ever since basketball was created by Dr. James Naismith, his game would spark years and years of amazing competition, legendary stories, and the game would be an outlet for some of the best athletes the world has ever seen. Basketball is unlike any sport, where, although it is a team game, the superstar level players truly run the show. This heavy focus on the individual player has led to a huge debate, a debate about who the greatest player of all time is. Not who's the best player in the 80s or the 90s, no. Who is the greatest of all time? This documentary will not answer that question, however, it will lay out every player's career as it transpired and every player's case for GOAT.
Shot here. Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Bang!
Followed by Russell. That was a big basket by Russell. Was right there to stuff it in.
There are 9 candidates for the greatest of all time. Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, and LeBron James. We're going to go in chronological order here, so we will start with the 11-time champion, Bill Russell. Russell's story begins in high school. Despite his towering height, he didn't stand out much in his first 2 years of high school. Due to his lack of offensive skill, it was hard for his coaches to put him on the court. He saw so few minutes that he actually shared a jersey with a fellow bench warmer. But after developing his defensive game further to a point where it was elite, he would shine in his last 2 years of high school. But due to his race, he did not get recruited to top basketball colleges. So after graduating, Russell would travel with an exhibition team. And it was with that exhibition team that he was finally able to show off his defensive prowess. At one of the games, a scout for the University of San Francisco was in the stands. The scout saw potential in Russell, who was at that point 6'8" and very athletic, with a standing vertical that was 4 feet higher than the rim. So, Russell was offered a scholarship. In his sophomore year, Russell led his team to the NCAA championship, receiving the MVP, averaging 21.4 points and 21.5 rebounds. He would win the championship once again later in his career with the San Francisco Dons. Russell was taken second overall by the St. Louis Hawks in the 1956 draft, the 10th draft in NBA history. But being that it was 1956 and racial tensions were at an all-time high, the Hawks, who had an all-white team, traded Russell to the Boston Celtics, in exchange for the 7th pick, Ed McCulley and Cliff Hagan, who would both become Hall of Fame players. Interestingly enough, the Rochester Royals were planning on taking Russell with the 1st overall pick. But the Celtics coach and general manager Red Auerbach convinced the Celtics owner Walter Brown to guarantee Rochester's owner Les Harrison a series of shows performed by the Ice Capades, a skating show that was at the peak of its popularity in the mid-50s. The Celtics owner was a part owner of this franchise, so he offered to give shows to Rochester, in exchange for the Royals passing on Bill Russell with the 1st pick. So the Royals passed on Bill Russell in exchange for a couple of skating shows, one of the weirdest trades in NBA history. The Royals took Cy Green, who would average 9.2 points for his career, and the Celtics would end up leaving this draft with 3 Hall of Famers. Tom Heinsohn, who was taken with the territorial pick, Casey Jones with the 13th pick, and of course Bill Russell. These 3 players would lay down the foundation for the Boston Celtics teams of the 50s and 60s. And it didn't take Bill Russell long to lead his team to the top. Russell spent up until December playing in the Olympics, so he would only play 48 games in his rookie season. But he would average 15 points and a league-high 19 rebounds. And he would lead the 56 Celtics to the NBA Finals, where they would face, ironically enough, the team that traded him, the St. Louis Hawks. Russell would average 13 points and 23 rebounds for the series, and he would put up 19 points and 32 rebounds in Game 7, leading the Celtics to a 2-point victory. It is no secret that the reason that many would consider Bill Russell the greatest of all time is the fact that he has more rings than he does fingers. After his rookie season, Russell would average 17 points and 23 rebounds a game, and he would win the MVP in just his 2nd season. The Boston Celtics would lose a close 6-game battle versus the St. Louis Hawks in the 1958 NBA Finals. Next season, Russell would again lead the Boston Celtics to the NBA championship, averaging a league-high 23 rebounds, as well as 17 points. In this final series, the Celtics would sweep the Minneapolis Lakers, with Russell averaging 29.5 rebounds per game. This championship would be preceded with 7 more consecutive championships. In 1960, Bill Russell and the Celtics would again defeat the team that traded him in the St. Louis Hawks, this time in 7 games. The Celtics would continue to win in 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66, beating the Hawks in 5 games in 1961, the LA Lakers in 7 games, the Lakers again in 6 games, the San Francisco Warriors led by Wilt Chamberlain in 4 games, the Lakers in 5 games in 1965, and the Lakers in 7 in 66. Utter dominance throughout that 8-year span. Over those 7 years, Russell would win 4 MVPs, average 16 points, 24 rebounds during the regular season, and he'd average 18 points and 26 rebounds as well as almost 5 assists for the playoffs. And after losing to the Wilt Chamberlain-led Sixers in 1967, the Celtics would again win the championship in 1968 and again in 1969. That leaves Russell with a career total of 11 championships and 5 MVPs.
So Masquerade's coach of the Celtics, huh?
You know I was only kidding.
Kidding? Howard didn't think so. He asked me, were you really a friend of mine or just an actor?
Well, what'd you tell him?
I told him that you were an obscure actor.
Ooh, after all those calls I've dialed to Seattle.
Did you dial direct?
Of course. I'll bet Howard doesn't make half that many calls to his friends.
What friends? Good friends are for keeps. So keep in touch. Long distance is the next best thing to being there.
One of the unfortunate parts of playing in the early days of the NBA is a lot of the awards that exist today did not exist back then. For example, the 1969 season was the first season of All-NBA defensive teams, which was Russell's last season in the NBA, but he would still be selected to the All-NBA defensive first team. So it's safe to assume that Russell would have made all defensive first team every year of his career. Defensive Player of the Year also did not exist until 1982. So we can safely assume that Russell would have won at least 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, because Russell was regarded as the best defender in the league for pretty much his entire career. And finally, Finals MVP did not exist until 1969. Where the first Finals MVP was given to Jerry West despite losing to the Bill Russell Celtics. So we'll just assume that Russell would have won 7 out of the 11 possible Finals MVPs. That would leave Russell with a career tally of 11 championships, 5 MVPs, 7 Finals MVPs, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 11 All-NBA First Team selections, 13 All-Defensive First Team selections, 11 All-Star appearances, and 4 rebounding titles. Numbers-wise, he has career averages of 15.1 points, 22.5 rebounds, 4.3 assists on 54% field goal percentage. Now once again, Russell's time period held him back in the numbers. The NBA did not record rebounds until 1973, 4 years after Bill's retirement. In his prime, it was speculated that Bill Russell averaged up to 8 blocks a game, with a career high of 17 blocks. Russell says that he averaged up to 15 a game in college. So let's just say that Russell averaged 6 blocks per game for his career. In 963 games, he would have tallied 4,815 career blocks. That is just short of 1,000 more blocks than Hakeem Olajuwon, who is first all-time. So that would make Russell first all-time in blocks, second all-time in rebounds, and 149th all-time in points. Russell's case for GOAT begins with him being the winningest player in not only basketball history, but sports history. 11 championships in 13 years. Pretty much being the best player on every team he was a part of up until his last 2 championships. He was also regarded as one of the best defenders of all time, one of the first bigs that could truly do it all on the defensive end. Because of his athleticism and speed, he could really guard anyone on the court, and he was potentially the greatest shot blocker of all time. Now, as for the criticism against Russell being the GOAT, he was not perfect. Though he was an 11-time champion, he notably had very good teammates. He played with 9 Hall of Famers all throughout his career, being on a team that had 5 Hall of Famers, including himself. It is also thought that Russell played in a weaker era of basketball, with less talent and less teams, which did lead to teams having a higher concentration of talent, but basketball was still relatively new and not that popular of a sport at the time. So top athletes were often choosing different sports to play, so the level of competition could not rival that of the 70s, 80s, and so on. And despite the Celtics' immense talent, they could have been a lot more dominant. They won multiple championships by a couple of points or a couple of lucky plays. They could have easily lost to the Lakers in a couple of finals. And when the Celtics finally had some comparable competition, the 1967 Sixers, they would lose in the conference finals. So while Russell did dominate his competition for nearly his entire career, he potentially did it against weak competition. Russell was also, despite his defensive dominance, a pretty mediocre offensive player. He never averaged more than 19 points per game, whereas every other candidate averaged 20 to 30 points per game a couple of times in their careers. With less production, you would expect higher efficiency, but Russell shot 44% for his career, which is the worst of the 9 candidates. So despite averaging the least amount of points per game of the 9 candidates, he also shot the worst percentage. Now when it comes to Bill Russell, you don't have to flip too many pages in the book of basketball to see the name Wilt Chamberlain. When the name Bill Russell is mentioned, the name Wilt Chamberlain doesn't fall far behind. And the contrast of these two players is really the contrast of what makes a great basketball player. Winning versus individual statistics, and Wilt Chamberlain no doubt had some absurd statistics. Wilt the Stilt began his basketball career in Overbrook High School, where unlike his counterpart in Russell, Wilt was immediately a standout athlete, starting on the varsity team for 3 years and scoring a total of 2,200 points in his high school career. And that came off of many big performances. Wilt scored 71, 74, and 90 points in 3 different games in his high school career. He averaged 44 points in his senior year, and in his 90-point performance, he scored 60 of those points in just 12 minutes. 1 quarter's worth of minutes, scored 60 points. Being nearly 7 feet tall in high school, Wilt was able to dominate his opponents inside for easy buckets. Wilt received the nickname The Stilt from a local writer covering high school athletics. All of his high school success led to him getting multiple scholarship offers from big schools. He eventually settled on Kansas. In Wilt's freshman season, he would average a staggering 30 points and 19 rebounds, and he would lead his team to the NCAA championship game where they would lose to UNC, but despite losing, he still won the Most Outstanding Player of the Tournament award. Wilt Chamberlain's second college season wasn't very fun for him. After being triple-teamed in the championship game, every team Kansas faced would adopt that same strategy. After his junior year, Wilt no longer wanted to play college ball, but at the time time, the NBA would not allow players to join the NBA until after their graduation class had been completed, so Wilt opted to play with the Harlem Globetrotters. After a year with the Globetrotters, Wilt would be drafted with a territorial pick to the Philadelphia Warriors in 1959, where he would receive the biggest contract in the NBA at the time in his rookie season, which at the time was only $30,000 a year. In Chamberlain's rookie debut, he would put up 44 points and 23 rebounds, and for the season, he would average 37 points and 27 rebounds. And he was named the NBA's MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same season, the first of two players in NBA history to do that. But after losing to the Celtics in the divisional finals, Wilt actually considered retirement, due to the feeling that he was unfairly treated in comparison to other more human-sized players. He would return though, having his already massive salary by the standards of those times doubled to $60,000 a year. He would average 38 and 27 in his second season. That season, he would become the first player to ever score 3,000 points in a single season, but unfortunately Wilt's outstanding play did not contribute a lot to winning. In his second season, Philly would get swept by the Nationals, and in his third season, despite averaging 50 points, 26 rebounds, boasting his infamous 100-point game, and averaging more minutes than there are in a regulation basketball game, being the only player in NBA history to put up 4,000 points in a single season, the Warriors still lost in 6 games to the Boston Celtics. 50 points and 48.5 minutes still wasn't enough. The Philadelphia Warriors would be relocated to San Francisco, and then a few years into him being in San Francisco, after years of team disappointment despite individual success, Wilt would be traded back to Philadelphia to the newly added 76ers, that just replaced the Philadelphia Warriors. This roster was stacked. Future Hall of Famer Hal Greer, multiple-time All-Star Chet Walker, the team would beat the Oscar Robertson-led Cincinnati Royals, and of course face Bill Russell's Celtics. This would be the 4th time our two Goatmentary candidates would clash in the playoffs. The series would go to 7, with the final game being on the Celtics' home court. Both candidates would have amazing performances. Wilt would put up 32 and 30, and Russell would put up 16, 27, and 8. In the final minute of the game, Wilt would hit 2 free throws as well as get an open dunk on Russell, cutting the Celtics' lead to 1. Russell would throw an inbound pass off of the side of the backboard, which would give the Sixers possession. The Sixers, with a chance to win the game, would inbound the ball, and
Greer's putting the ball on a play. He gets it out deep, and Havlicek steals it. Over the fence rolls. Havlicek stole the ball. It's all over. It's all over.
with the game within their grasp, the Sixers would lose, and Wilt would now be 0-4 against Russell in the playoffs. After that series, Wilt officially got the label of a loser. In the following season, Wilt would win MVP, and the Sixers would lose to the Celtics again in the playoffs. After this loss to the Celtics, many of Wilt's teammates were critical of him. Wilt would routinely skip practices, and was almost a separate entity from the team, which led to chemistry issues that didn't help against the Celtics. Sixers management also fired the head coach of the Sixers who let Wilt get away with this behavior, Dwarf Shays, in favor of Alex Hannum. Alex didn't let Wilt get away with this behavior and insisted that Wilt take a step back in his role as a scorer, opting for Wilt to be more of a playmaker, like his counterpart Bill Russell, take less shots and focus on defense. Wilt protested this many times to the point where it seemed like he would fight Coach Hannum, but Hannum, who is a 6'7", 209-pound former player, never backed down from the 7'1", 280-pound Wilt Chamberlain. This led to Wilt having immense respect for Hannum, so he gave in to his game plan. Wilt averaged a career low at the time, 21.1 points per game, but also averaged 24.2 rebounds and a career high at the time, 7.8 assists, and he shot a record-breaking 68% from the field. While his point production was far lower, his insane efficiency made this one of Wilt's most impressive seasons. And because of his success, winning his third MVP award, along with his teammates improving from the new style of play, the Sixers and Chamberlain finally defeated the Celtics. They would face face Wilt's former team in the San Francisco Warriors in the finals. The Sixers would win in 6 games. Believe it or not, Wilt only averaged 17 points per game for the series, but he also contributed 28.5 rebounds per game and 6.8 assists. Next year, the Sixers would run the same game plan. Wilt would be the only center in NBA history to lead the league in total assists, averaging 8.6 a game and totaling 702. Because of this, Wilt would win his 4th and final MVP award, but unfortunately, in their matchup versus the Celtics, the Sixers were struggling with injuries. The Sixers still managed to go up 3-1, but would become the first team in NBA history to blow a 3-1 lead. Wilt went back to his selfish ways and complained about his touches. This led to further turmoil with the team, and this, along with personal reasons, led to Coach Hannum resigning. Then Wilt would be traded to the Lakers. Wilt had asked for this trade, but the reason for it has been heavily disputed. A disagreement with ownership over a legal dispute, unlisted personal reasons, Wilt feeling like he's grown out of Philly, even him wanting an opportunity to date white women was listed because that wasn't accepted in Philly but was in LA. Whatever the reason, Wilt was traded to the Lakers for Darrell Imhoff, Jerry Chambers, and Archie Clark. Wilt was joining a team that featured Hall of Famers Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, along with a plethora of talented role players. Wilt's start in LA wasn't without drama. He had turmoil with the Lakers owners and the head coach, who he felt catered the offense too much to West and Baylor and not enough to him. The Lakers still made the finals despite Wilt's struggles to fit in. Wilt would once again have to match up with his rival Bill Russell. Wilt would struggle mightily in this series, only averaging 11.7 points per game on 50% shooting. Late in Game 7, after Wilt had led a comeback, he would twist his knee badly on a rebound.
Joined us Sam Jones, foul out of the ball game. Here's Havlicek. Rebound coming off, and Chamberlain gets it. 5:55 to go, and Chamberlain hurt his leg on the play. Baylor. Russell with the rebound. 103 to 94.
Chamberlain can't move, Chris. He's down there holding that knee. He really twisted that knee on that last rebound.
But he did get the rebound and quickly calls for a timeout.
20 seconds, officials timeout. He'd have to sit out for the rest of the game, and the Celtics would win Game 7 by 2 points. A brutal loss for Wilt and the Lakers. Him sitting was controversial because many didn't see the injury as severe enough to sit him for the last few minutes, which led the Lakers management to fire the head coach. Wilt would go down with an injury in the 1969-70 season after a good start with the new head coach of the Lakers, Joe Mulaney. He wouldn't play again until the last 3 games of the season. The Lakers still made the finals to face the New York Knicks, led by Willis Reed and Walt Frazier. The series would be tied 3-3 with Willis Reed going down with a severe injury in Game 6. The Lakers seemed to be guaranteed to win with Willis out. But in one of the most inspiring moments in NBA history, late in Game 7, Willis would play. Hobbling onto the court, he only scored 4 points, but played 27 minutes despite being severely injured. This inspired his teammates to beat the Lakers by 14. 2 years in a row, the Lakers choked away the series. Next season, the Lakers would bring back Gail Goodrich in free agency. They would face the Bucks in the playoffs, but with Elgin Baylor gone with an Achilles tear and Jerry West out with a knee injury, the Lakers would lose to the Milwaukee Bucks, led by league MVP Lou Alcindor, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as we know him now. The Lakers would hire former Celtics guard Bill Sharman, who had played with Bill Russell. He would insist that Wilt focus on defense and being a good teammate and less on scoring, similar to what happened with Alex Hannum, learning the same lesson twice. With this mindset, the Lakers, after matching up with Kareem again, would win, with Wilt matching the 11-year younger superstar play after play. The Lakers would once again face the Knicks in the finals, and they would beat them 4-1, with Wilt winning Finals MVP, averaging 19 and 23. In the final year of his career, Wilt went out averaging 13 and 18 and beat his own record for field goal percentage, shooting 72.7% for the season. But in the last finals of his career, the Lakers would lose 4-1 to the Knicks. Wilt would sign with an ABA team to be a player coach, but be sued by the Lakers because he was still under contract with them. He would be forced to be just a coach. And after a year with the San Diego Conquistadors, he retired.
When 7-foot 1-inch Wilt Chamberlain tried to get in a Volkswagen, people said it couldn't be done.
Oh, man.
It couldn't. Of course, there's plenty of room for Bill Cunningham, but then he's only 6'6".
Just like Bill Russell, some of Wilt's stats were limited by the era that he played in. No all-defensive teams until later in his career, blocks weren't recorded, there was no Finals MVP award in the first championship of his career, and while there was no Defensive Player of the Year award, I don't think that Wilt would have won as many as Russell, which, as we previously speculated, to be 4 for Bill. We will say that Wilt wins 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and as for the blocks, it's been speculated that Wilt and Russell averaged roughly the same amount of blocks, which was 6 a game for his career. So just like Russell, we will multiply the amount of games that Wilt played times 6 blocks, which would put Wilt first all-time on the all-time blocks list with an unbelievable 6,270 career blocks. He would also have a lot more all-defensive selections because the award only came into existence in 1971. Because there's only one spot on the first team for a center, we will give Wilt second team honors because we gave Russell first team, because for the most part he's considered a better defender. This would give Wilt 10 all-defensive second team selections along with 2 more first teams he would have gotten after Russell's retirement. Wilt's case for GOAT no doubt lies in his numbers. He has the fewest amount of championships of the 9 candidates, but without a doubt the most impressive individual statistics. Wilt is 6th all-time in scoring, one of 7 players in the 30K points club. He's 1st all-time in rebounds, with a 2,300 rebound lead on Bill Russell. Wilt's dominance on the offensive end led to him putting up the highest scoring performance in NBA history with 100 points versus the New York Knicks in 1962. He also has 6 of the top 10 scoring performances in NBA history, and he scored 60 plus points 32 times in his career. Offensively, Wilt was arguably the most unstoppable force the league has ever seen, on top of his dominance on the glass and the shot blocking that would have put him #1 all time. He won 4 MVPs in his career, won Finals MVP once, led the league in scoring 7 times, rebounds 11 times, assists once. He was the only center to ever lead the league in assists. He was All-NBA First Team 7 times, All-NBA Second Team 3 times, All-Defensive First Team 4 times, and All-Defensive Second Team 10 times. His dominance, along with his ridiculous scoring outputs, is the main reason many would call him the GOAT. But the dominance came as a double-edged sword. While his scoring made him individually great, the only time Wilt ever won in his career was when he sacrificed his offensive game. In 1967 and 1972, Wilt won by reducing his role offensively, so Wilt's dominance could be seen as a detriment to his teams. So while Wilt was great individually, his numbers don't seem to correlate with winning, at least at the highest level. Wilt won 2 rings, but lost in the finals 4 times, and lost to Bill Russell in the conference finals multiple times. Wilt, at his peak performance, numbers-wise, was a loser. Only when he wasn't dominating the ball and scoring the most that he could, did he win. And he doesn't get the excuse of no help. He played with many Hall of Fame level players like Hal Greer, Billy Cunningham, Paul Arzon, Nate Thurmond, Elgin Baylor, and Jerry West. It wasn't as much help as Bill Russell, but he certainly wasn't stuck with scrubs. So in summary, his talent was unbelievable, but he struggled to win on the biggest stage with that talent. When the league was looking for a new star as the Wilt and Russell era came to a close, a new player emerged as the next superstar of the NBA. That player was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There is no word that can properly sum up Lew Alcindor's high school career better than the word dominance. Lew was 6'8" and dunking the ball at the age of 13, so naturally in high school he dominated. He led Power Memorial Academy to 3 straight New York City Catholic championships, a 71-game winning streak, and a 79-2 record overall. Power would also win the National High School Championship in Lew Alcindor's junior season. Alcindor would play college ball at UCLA. After playing on the freshman team in Lew's varsity debut, he would drop 56 points, a UCLA record, making a statement early for how dominant he would be. He would win Player of the Year twice, he was a 3-time first-team All-American, won 3 championships, winning Most Outstanding Player in the NCAA for all 3 tournaments, and he would be the first Naismith College Player of the Year in 1969. He was so dominant in college that he would be the reason for dunking being banned after the '67 season, a ban that would continue for a decade. The Milwaukee Bucks would win a coin toss with the Phoenix Suns for the first overall pick and draft Alcindor. In his rookie year, Lew would average 29 and 14, being second in the league in scoring behind Jerry West and his 31.2 points per game. The Bucks would also improve by 29 wins. He would obviously win Rookie of the Year, and he'd lead the Bucks to the second round of the playoffs, with playoff averages of 35 and 17 on 57% shooting. In the offseason, the Bucks would acquire Oscar Robertson in exchange for Flynn Robinson, who had just made his first All-Star appearance, and Charlie Polk. This addition would be pivotal in the Bucks becoming a powerhouse, winning 66 games, going on a record at the time 20-game winning streak. Alcindor would win his first MVP award with season averages of 32 points, which was the best in the league, as well as 16 rebounds. The Bucks would go 12-2 in the playoffs, including a sweep in the finals, and Lew would of course be the finals MVP, having averaged 27 and 19 on 60% shooting. And after winning the 71 championship, Lew would have his name changed to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem would win his second MVP, averaging his career best 35, 17, and 5 on 57% shooting. Absurd stats, but this would be the start of a trend in Milwaukee. Kareem would play phenomenally, but the Bucks wouldn't see much success, losing in the Western Conference Finals because back then the Bucks were a Western Conference team. In '73, Kareem would put up 30, 16, and 5, but they'd lose to the Warriors in the first round, and then he'd lose to the Boston Celtics in a crushing 7-game series in 1974, after winning his third MVP. And in the 74-75 season, with Kareem missing nearly 20 games and Oscar Robertson retiring, the Bucks didn't even make the playoffs. Because of this lack of team success, as well as him feeling that Milwaukee didn't fit his cultural needs, with him being raised in New York, he wanted to play in a big city, so he asked to be traded to the Knicks or the Lakers. He would get his wish heading to the Lakers for Elmore Smith, who was a double-double center, Brian Winters, who would go on to be a 2-time All-Star with Milwaukee, Dave Myers, and Junior Bridgman, who would average 14 points per game for his 9 seasons with Milwaukee. His career with LA would get off to a great individual start. Kareem averaged 28 points, a league-best 17 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4.1 blocks a game. He would win his 4th MVP, however, because of old divisional rules, despite having the 4th best record in the West, they would miss the playoffs. He would win his 5th MVP in the following season. The Lakers would face the Portland Trail Blazers in the conference finals. Kareem would battle Bill Walton down low, and Kareem definitely won the individual battle, but Walton had significantly better help, and the Lakers would lose in a sweep. For the next 2 years, the Lakers would lose to the Sonics twice in the playoffs, but in 1979, the Lakers would get the first overall pick and use it to draft Magic Earvin Johnson. Kareem finally had some help in LA. Kareem would average 25, 11, and 3.5 blocks on a career best 60% shooting. That high efficiency could be attributed to him having a point guard who knew how to set him up. This performance, along with the Lakers winning 60 games, led to Kareem winning his record-breaking 6th MVP. The addition of Magic wasn't the only improvement to the team. Norm Nixon averaged 17 and 9, Jamal Wilkes averaged 20 points per game, and Michael Cooper developed further as a defender. The Lakers would make the NBA Finals. Kareem would average 33, 14, and 4.5 blocks versus the Sixers, but the Finals MVP would go to Magic Johnson, who after Kareem went down in Game 5, would would close out the series in Game 6 with 42, 15, and 7. And from this point on, Kareem would average 27 and 2 for the remainder of his career. The Lakers would win the 85 finals. Kareem averaged 26, 9, and 5 in that series. In Game 5, Kareem would score 36 points to go up 3-2, and he'd score 29 in Game 6, which would lead to him winning his second Finals MVP. In 1987, the Lakers would beat the Celtics in 6 games. Magic would win Finals MVP. In 1988, the Lakers would beat the Detroit Pistons in 7 games, and James Worthy would win Finals MVP. Kareem, at 40 years old, only averaged 13 points and 4 rebounds, and in 1989, Kareem would play out his final season at the age of 41, averaging 10, 3, and 1, and he would play his final game in Game 4 of the 89 Finals, a series in which the Lakers would lose in a sweep. Kareem put up 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 blocks on 2 for 8 shooting.
In basketball, is it better to be bigger or smaller?
Bigger. Like us.
Right, like us. Up top. Yeah.
Kareem might have the most stacked resume of any player in NBA history. He is a 6-time champion, 6-time MVP, 2-time Finals MVP, 10-time All-NBA First Team player, Second Team 5 times, All-Defensive First Team 5 times, and Second Team 6 times. He won Rookie of the Year and was a 19-time All-Star. He is first all-time in scoring, he's third in rebounds, and for blocks, in Kareem's first 4 seasons, the league did not record blocks. Had he averaged 3.5 blocks over those years, that would be an additional 1,123 blocks, which would give him 4,312 career blocks, which would place him first all-time, but third when you add in Russell and Wilt's hypothetical block numbers. Kareem's biggest case for GOAT has to be the fact that his name is just scattered everywhere. Being first all-time in scoring, top 3 in rebounds, top 3 in blocks, he owns the record for MVPs and is tied for second most rings of any of the 9 candidates. Kareem was the best player in the league for a decade, and his numbers more than prove that. But many would argue that these achievements, especially his place on all-time lists, has a lot to do with his ridiculous longevity. Kareem only averaged 24.6 points for his career. That's nothing crazy. Damian Lillard and Russell Westbrook averaged just 1 less point per game for their careers, and they certainly aren't on the level of a top scorer of all time. Kareem played for the second most games in NBA history, second to Robert Parrish, who only played 51 more games, and he's first in minutes by almost 3,000 minutes. Had Kareem retired at a normal age, let's say 36, he would have retired with 31,527 points, which is certainly impressive, but would move him from first to 6th all-time in scoring, as well as move him down from 3rd to 7th in rebounds. However, the counterpoint to that would be, it is very impressive for a player in the 80s, where sports medicine clearly wasn't at its peak, to play as much as Kareem did. Maybe he wasn't scoring 40 every night, but being able to play as long as he did is no doubt impressive, and could potentially be seen as an example of why he is potentially the greatest. So Kareem's numbers are all over all-time lists. He won a record-breaking 6 MVPs, but those numbers have a lot to do with Kareem playing an absurd amount of time. When the big man era of the 70s ended, a new pair of rivals came into the league, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. And because we just ended Kareem's overview, it's only fair that we start with Kareem's best teammate, Magic Johnson. In his freshman year of college, Johnson went to a predominantly white school where Irvin struggled to get the respect of his white teammates. He was often ignored by these teammates, never having the ball passed to him. But Johnson would eventually earn the respect of his white teammates, and in his sophomore year, he would earn the nickname Magic in a triple-double performance where Magic recorded 36 points, 18 rebounds, and 16 assists. In his final high school season as a senior, Johnson led Everett to a 27-1 record and a state championship. Johnson would be known as the best high school player in Michigan, and he was named a McDonald's All-American. Despite being recruited by many top college teams, Magic decided to stay in Michigan, attending Michigan State University because the head coach would allow the 6'9" Johnson to play point guard. Johnson averaged 17, 8, and 7 as a freshman and led the Spartans to a 25-5 record. They would reach the Elite Eight and lose to the champion Kentucky Wildcats. In Johnson's second season, the Spartans would qualify for the NCAA tournament, and they would face Indiana State, who were led by Larry Bird. This matchup would become the most watched college basketball game ever, and Johnson would win in the first game of their long-standing rivalry, winning the Most Outstanding Player of the Tournament award. Johnson would then declare for the NBA draft, where he would be selected first overall by the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, unlike most players taken number 1 overall, Johnson was drafted into an amazing situation with LA. The pick used to take Magic originally belonged to the Jazz, which the Lakers got in exchange for Gail Goodrich. The Lakers were actually a talented team, with the best player in the NBA at the time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, on the roster, as well as Jamal Wilkes, who averaged 20 a game, and Norm Nixon, who averaged 17 points and 8 assists. Johnson would lose out on the Rookie of the Year award to none other than Larry Bird, but he would make the All-Rookie First Team and be named an All-Star with averages of 18 points, 7.7 rebounds, and 7.3 assists. The Lakers won 60 games in the regular season and would reach the NBA Finals, where they would face the Julius Erving-led Sixers after going up 3-2. Kareem missed Game 6 due to an ankle injury, so Lakers coach Paul Westhead decided to start Magic Johnson at center. Magic would put up 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals, and he led the Lakers to a Game 6 and series victory. Because of that game, Johnson would become the only rookie in NBA history to win Finals MVP. Magic's second season wasn't nearly as glamorous. He missed 45 games with a left knee injury, then came back just in time for the 81 playoffs, where he fit in awkwardly, and as a result, the 54-win Lakers were upset by the 40-win Rockets, losing 2-1 in the first round, after Johnson airballed a last-second shot in Game 3. In his third season, Magic became one of the most disliked players in the NBA. After signing the biggest NBA contract ever at the time, Johnson would then demand a trade due to a dispute with head coach Paul Westhead. This dispute was due to Westhead having a slower-paced offense, which went against Johnson's fast-paced style. Lakers owner Jerry Buss decided to fire Westhead instead of trading Johnson. A player getting a coach fired is more common and accepted in the modern NBA, but in the 80s it was not. So Magic was booed all around the league, including in LA. Despite all the controversy, Johnson nearly averaged a triple-double, averaging 18.6 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 9.5 assists, as well as a league-high 2.7 steals, and he became the third player in NBA history to put up 700 points, 700 rebounds, and 700 assists in the same season. The Lakers would make their way to the finals once again to face the Sixers, and Johnson would win his second Finals MVP after getting a triple-double with 13, 13, and 13. The Lakers would make the finals again, but Johnson's teammate Norm Nixon, James Worthy, and Bob McAdoo were all injured, and they faced the Sixers, who added Moses Malone. The Lakers would lose in a sweep. After this, Lakers general manager Jerry West traded Norm Nixon, which allowed Johnson to no longer have to share ball handling duties, which allowed Magic to average a league high and career high 13 assists, along with 17 points and 7 rebounds. The Lakers made it to the finals again, this time to face Bird's Celtics for the first time in the finals. The Lakers won Game 1, but would narrowly lose Game 2 after Magic failed to get up a shot before the final buzzer.
2 seconds, 1 second.
In Game 4, he had the ball stolen and missed 2 free throws in the last minute of the game.
Harris steals the ball, and the Celtics call a timeout with 3 seconds to play. He misses the first. Biggest lead of the game, the Lakers, 14 points in the second period. Johnson misses them both. Bird the rebound.
And he had the ball stolen late in Game 7.
Johnson is going in against Cooper again. And this time he's fouled.
The failure from this series would result in him being dubbed as Tragic Johnson. The Lakers, led by Magic, would face the Celtics again. In Game 1, the Lakers would allow a finals record 148 points, so bad start. But 38-year-old Kareem put up 30 and 17 in Game 2. Kareem also had 36 in Game 5. The Lakers would win in 6 games because of his big performances, so Kareem would win the Finals MVP over Magic. Next season, Kareem could not handle a 23-year-old Hakeem Olajuwon in the post in the Western Conference Finals, so they would lose. By the next season, Magic stepped up his game, averaging a career-high 23.9 points and 12 assists. This led to him winning MVP. The Lakers faced the Celtics once again. In Game 4, Magic would put up his iconic game-winning hook.
Byron Scott is in the ball game now. 5 seconds to go. Magic with a hook shot. Scores with 2.
The Lakers would go on to win the championship. Magic won Finals MVP with averages of 26 points, 13 assists, 8 rebounds, and 2.3 steals, and he did this on 54% shooting. And with that game winner, he removed himself from the nickname Tragic Johnson. Next season, the Lakers would again win a championship, beating the bad boy Pistons. But James Worthy would walk away with the Finals MVP because of his 36-point, 16-rebound, and 10-assist performance in Game 7. This would be Johnson's 5th and final championship. Magic would win MVP, lose to the bad boy Pistons in the Finals next season after Kareem retired. Johnson won his 3rd MVP. Then the season after, they lost to the Michael Jordan-led Chicago Bulls. Before the 91-92 season, in a physical, Magic found out that he had contracted the HIV virus. He then called for a press conference and shocked the basketball world.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today.
Despite retiring, Magic was voted as an All-Star for the 92 season, and he would play and wins MVP, putting up 25 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds. He also played with the Dream Team. He would return to the Lakers in the 95-96 season, coming off of the bench for 32 games as a power forward, averaging 14, 7, and 6 as a 36-year-old, and then he would retire officially after the 96 season.
I heard Converse made a pair of Bird shoes for last year's MVP.
Yep.
Well, they made a pair of Magic shoes for this year's MVP.
Okay, Magic, show me what you got.
The Bird shoe, the Magic shoe. Choose your weapon from Converse.
Magic is, to most people, the greatest passer of all time. He averaged 11.2 assists per game for his career. He is 5th all-time in assists despite retiring prematurely. Had he not retired, if he averaged 10.5 assists for the 4 years that he was retired with HIV, playing 75 games each season, he would move up to 2nd all-time with 13,291 total assists, and if he had averaged 18 points per game for those 4 years, he would have a career total of 23,107 points, moving him from 80th all-time to 30th all-time. And he would move up from 21st to 8th in steals. Magic won 5 championships, was Finals MVP for 3 of those championships, won MVP 3 times, was All-NBA First Team 9 times, Second Team once, and was a 12-time All-Star, winning 2 All-Star MVPs. Magic's case for GOAT definitely has to be his ability to score and pass at elite levels. Passing better than anyone besides for maybe John Stockton, and being a good, albeit not amazing, scorer. He also averaged 7 rebounds a game and nearly averaged a triple-double in 92. Magic was a very versatile player, and that versatility led to the Lakers winning 5 championships. But some would argue that being 6'9" playing point guard gave Magic a significantly unfair advantage. Even if he wasn't being guarded by a point guard, that meant that the opposition's point guard was guarding the Lakers' shooting guard or small forward, so that was a mismatch that Magic could get an assist off of. His size was definitely a huge factor in why he was so versatile, but at the same time, it's not Magic's fault for using his height to his advantage. Magic also had a hell of a supporting cast. He is the only player in this doc that was teammates with another Goatmentary candidate, besides for him being a teammate with that candidate, which was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Having the all-time scoring leader on your roster definitely helped. He also had James Worthy as a teammate who was a great scorer for the Lakers and a Hall of Famer. Magic also lost out on 2 Finals MVPs and underperformed terribly against the Celtics in the finals. Even if he redeemed himself, that epic collapse is still a significant stain on his career. So Magic was a great passer, versatile player, and winner, but the winning he experienced as a player could be heavily attributed to the amount of help that he had throughout his career. When the name Magic Johnson is said out loud, the name Larry Bird doesn't fall far. As a freshman in high school, Bird broke his foot and missed most of the season, but he would routinely still practice with the team, putting up shots while using crutches at the same time, which was an amazing example of how dedicated Bird was to the game. Bird would sneak to the gym in between classes and stay after school to get shots up. Larry would spend every free moment he had on a basketball court, even limiting his sleep time so he could practice more. Bird would be a starter as a junior, being a do-it-all player in an era where those were rare. He was the second leading scorer, and he was the best rebounder and passer on the team. He would step up his game significantly in his senior year, averaging 31 points and 21 rebounds. Bird received a scholarship to play college ball for his hometown Indiana Hoosiers, then he dropped out after struggling to adjust to the vastly different college environment, but he would eventually enroll with Indiana State. He would have an amazing 3-year career with the Sycamores, averaging 30, 13, and 5 over his 3 years. They would go 33-0 in his junior season, leading them to the 1979 NCAA championship game to play Magic Johnson's Spartans, where Bird would struggle, shooting 33% from the field, and the Sycamores would lose. Bird was drafted in 1978, even though he would play for Indiana State in the 1978-79 season. There were no rules in place at the time that said you couldn't draft players who were not yet coming to the NBA, so the Celtics drafted Bird 6th overall with the intention to sign him once he was done with college. After this draft, a rule was implemented called the Bird Collegiate Rule, which would prevent this from happening again. In his rookie season, Bird would completely transform the Boston Celtics. In the season before drafting him, the C's would win only 32 games. With Bird, they would have the best record in the East with 61 wins, a 29-game improvement. Bird would average 21, 10, and 4.5 assists, shooting 47% from the field and 40% from 3. Bird would win Rookie of the Year, but the Celtics would lose to the Sixers in the conference finals. In the offseason, the Celtics would acquire 2 Hall of Fame big men. The Celtics owned the first pick in the draft that they got in a trade from the Pistons, and they traded that pick to the Warriors for center Robert Parrish and the 3rd overall pick that they used to select power forward Kevin McHale, one of the biggest heists in NBA history. history. Bird would average 21, 11, 5.5 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Robert Parrish would average 19, 10, and 2.5 blocks. The Celtics won 62 games. They would face the Sixers in the conference finals once again. The Celtics would find themselves down 3-1, but the Celtics would win the next 3 games to make it to Larry's first finals. He would average 27, 13, and 5 in the conference finals, but in the NBA finals, Bird would really struggle shooting the ball, shooting just 41%, averaging 15 points per game. But to make up for that, he averaged 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2.5 steals. The Celtics would beat the Houston Rockets 4-2, but because of his shooting woes, the finals MVP would go to Cedric Maxwell, who averaged 19 and 10 on 57% shooting. Next season, Bird would average 23, 11, 6, and 2 on 50% shooting, and he'd be second in MVP voting, but the Celtics in their third matchup versus the Sixers would lose in 7 games. They would lose in the second round next year, but in Bird's 5th season, he would win his first MVP, averaging 24 points, 10 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 2 steals, and a block, shooting 50% from the field. The Celtics would advance to the finals, facing the Magic Johnson-led Lakers. The rivalry between him and Magic reached the championship stage once again, this time in the NBA. Magic would average 18, 8, and 13.5 assists, but Bird would match it with 27, 14, and 3.5 assists. The Celtics would win in 7 games, and Bird would win Finals MVP. Next season, Bird would step up his game even further, putting up 29, 10, and 6.5 assists, shooting at 52% from the field, 43% from 3, and he was just 2% off from shooting 50-49, shooting 88% from the free throw line. He would win his second consecutive MVP, and the Celtics would face the Lakers for the second consecutive season. However, the result would not be the same, as the Lakers would win in 6 games. Bird would win his third consecutive MVP, making him one of 3 players to ever do this, averaging 26 points, 7 assists, and despite being moved to small forward, he would average nearly 10 rebounds. He was just 0.4 off from shooting 50-40-90 in both field goal percentage and free throw percentage. The Celtics only lost 1 game in the first 3 rounds, and they would face the Hakeem Ralph Sampson Houston Rockets. Bird would average 24 points, 9.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists, and 2.7 steals. The Celtics would beat the Houston Rockets in 6 games, and the '86 Celtics would become regarded as one of the greatest teams of all time. The Celtics made it to the finals again in the following season, but they had to fight through the Bucks and Pistons, and the Lakers, who they played in the finals, made it there easily. Boston was beat up and the Lakers were dominant. The Celtics lost in 6 games. Next season, Bird would have the best statistical year of his career, 30 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists, shooting 50-40-90, but the Celtics would lose to the Pistons in the conference finals. Next season, Bird would sit out with back issues, only playing 6 games, and for the next 3 seasons, his career would fizzle out as a back injury he got in the offseason a few years prior shoveling gravel led to chronic back issues which shortened his career significantly. He would play the last game of his career in Game 7 versus the Cleveland Cavaliers in the '92 playoffs. He would put up 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists, and then he would retire.
The Converse weapon. That's the shoe. That's Magic do what he was born to do.
It may be so, but that's not all. They let Isaiah play like he's 10 feet tall.
For the kind of moves that never fail, the weapon's the choice of Kevin McHale.
The same is true for Mark Aguirre. When I wear weapons, I'm on fire.
Well, what can the weapons do for King? Well, I can do just about anything.
You already know what you did for me.
What?
I walked away with the MVP.
The Converse weapon, the #1 weapon in the NBA.
Larry Bird was given the nickname Larry Legend for a reason. The reason being, the guy was just legendary. While his numbers may not stand out against some of the other candidates, though they are definitely impressive, and he is only a 3-time champion, which isn't a lot compared to some other candidates, but he is arguably the most legendary player. Bird has so many iconic and just plain, well, legendary moments from his career. Bird had an eye for the dramatic. He was known for his trash talk. One of the things that led to Julius Erving iconically punching and strangling Bird was Larry trash-talking him. As the game had gone along, Bird counted up how many points he had versus how many Irving had. By the end of the third, Bird had 42 and Irving had 6. Midway through the fourth, Bird told Irving to retire, which led to the altercation. He also famously walked into the locker room of the three-point contest, said, "I hope all y'all are talking about who's coming second," and for the next 2 contests, he would shoot in his warm-ups and win both contests, winning 3 in a row, easily. He would famously often tell opponents what move he was about to make, then proceed to make it. He played a whole game left-handed, scoring 22 points left-handed, broke Kevin McHale's Celtics scoring record 9 days after McHale broke the record, scoring so impressively that he eventually made the opposing team cheer for him because of how unbelievable he was. Those are just a few of many legendary moments. Bird is also one of the greatest clutch performers ever. The man had ice in his veins and he knew it. Bird was a 3-time champion, 3-time MVP, winning those back-to-back-to-back, Finals MVP twice, All-NBA First Team 9 times, Second Team twice, All-Defensive Second Team 3 times, Rookie of the Year, and a 12-time All-Star, winning MVP once. For Bird, he was a great scorer, great rebounder, and great passer. Similar to Magic, he was very versatile. His passing often goes under the radar because of how good of a scorer he was. Bird won his fair share of individual awards and was a 3-time champion, but those awards don't stack up as well against many other candidates, and Bird had the advantage of playing with one of the league's greatest 6 men and post players, Kevin McHale, and one of the best defensive centers ever in Robert Parrish, as well as some other great teammates. So Bird definitely had his fair share of greatness, but the scale of it seems smaller than most of the other candidates. When the era of Bird and Magic came to a close, the league needed a new face, and that face was Michael Jordan.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move by Jordan! It counts. And the foul. A look away to Livingston. Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
MJ started his basketball career playing high school ball at Emsley A. Laney High School. Jordan tried out for the varsity team in his sophomore season, but due to him being only 5'11", he was forced to stay in JV. Motivated to improve and having grown 4 inches over the summer, Jordan made the varsity team and averaged 25 points per game for his junior and senior seasons. Jordan received many scholarship offers for his high school play, and he eventually settled with North Carolina University. As a freshman for the Tar Heels, Jordan averaged 13.4 points on 53.4% shooting. He won Freshman of the Year and won an NCAA championship after hitting a game-winning mid-range jumper versus the Patrick Ewing-led Georgetown Hoyas.
The tie, 18.
This iconic shot would be the turning point of Jordan's career, where he got the world's attention as basketball's next big thing. He averaged 20 points and 5 rebounds for his sophomore and junior seasons, shooting 54% from the field. He won the Naismith and Wooden College Player of the Year awards, and he would skip his senior season to declare for the NBA draft, where he was taken 3rd overall by the Chicago Bulls, with Hakeem Olajuwon and bust Sam Bowie going over him. Jordan was one of the best rookies of all time in his first season with the Bulls, averaging 28 points, 6.5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2.5 steals on 51.5% shooting. He was an all-star, and he brought the Bulls to their first playoff appearance in 4 years, despite a losing record. But they lost to the defensive juggernaut Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. In his second season, MJ would suffer the only major injury of his career. He broke his foot in the third game of the season. He would miss 64 games. The Bulls management would try to convince MJ to sit out for the rest of the season so that the team could get a high draft pick, but MJ accused them of trying to tank, and they let him play for the remaining 15 games of the season, and Jordan struggled, only averaging 22 points per game, doing so shooting 45% from the field, and the Bulls narrowly made the playoffs with the 5th worst record to make the playoffs in NBA history, with a 30-52 record. The Bulls would face the '87 Celtics, often considered one of the greatest teams ever, and Jordan would famously score 63 on the Celtics in Game 2, but the Bulls would still lose in a sweep. Next season, Jordan would become the only guard to score 3,000 points in one season, and be only the second player to ever do it behind Wilt Chamberlain. He averaged an absurd 37 points per game, along with 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 3 steals, and 1.5 blocks on 58% shooting from the field. Jordan did this on a team whose second best player was Charles Oakley, who was averaging a double-double on worse field goal percentage than Jordan despite being a big man. Jordan was on a really bad team, but he was so dominant that team was at 500, but a team built entirely around one guy wouldn't beat a team with a lot of depth, which is why the Boston Celtics would sweep the Bulls once again. This pattern would carry over for MJ. He had more seasons of insane individual accomplishment followed by disappointment in the playoffs because of a lack of help on his roster. In the 87-88 season, he'd put up 35 points, 5.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3.2 steals, and 1.5 blocks on 53% shooting. MJ would win his first MVP and also take home Defensive Player of the Year, making him one of 5 guards to ever win Defensive Player of the Year, and making him one of 4 players to win both MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in their career. The Bulls, who won 50 games that year off of Jordan's performance, would beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round, but they would lose to the Detroit Pistons in the second round. The Pistons, who had built a defensive game plan around MJ called the Jordan Rules. That plan was pretty much knock him to the ground.
Woolridge set the pick. Jordan lost. Vinnie Johnson and
every
and a guard. Now look at the triple team as Sally and Rodman collapsed on Jordan.
Damn.
Rodman and Jordan this time. Blocking foul, Dennis Rodman.
Time. The pattern continued for the following season. MJ put up 33, 8, and 8 on 54% shooting. The Bulls would make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, beating the Cavaliers in an infamous series.
Sellers has Jordan. Jordan with 2 seconds to go, puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago.
And beating the Knicks. But Jordan and the Bulls would once again fall to the Detroit Pistons. Next season was the first year that Jordan had some real help. Scottie Pippen, who the Bulls had traded for in the '87 draft, was developing nicely and made the first All-Star appearance of his career, averaging 16, 7, 5, and 2.5 steals and 1.2 blocks on 48% shooting. And Horace Grant, who the Bulls also picked up in '87, averaged 13 and 8.5 rebounds on 55% shooting. And the Bulls brought in head coach Phil Jackson, who introduced the triangle offense that the Bulls would see a lot of success with. The Bulls were the best they'd been, winning 55 games. Jordan won the scoring title for the 5th year in a row, and the Bulls made it to the Eastern Conference Finals again, to face none other than the Detroit Pistons, but they would lose in a 7-game series, losing to the Pistons for the 3rd consecutive season. With all this losing in the playoffs and the league still being very much big men oriented, many did not believe you could win with a guard, i.e. Jordan, as your best player. But Jordan and the Bulls proved that all wrong in the '91 season. Jordan won his 2nd MVP, the Bulls won 61 games, the Bulls beat the Knicks and Sixers in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, they advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals to face the Pistons for the last time, and the Bulls dominated, beating the Pistons in a sweep. Jordan averaged 35, 7, 2.5 steals, and 2 blocks on 54% shooting. Scottie also dominated with 22, 8, 5, 3, and 2. The Pistons walked off of the court in Game 4 before the game was even over, without shaking the hands of a single Bulls player. Jordan had passed this obstacle in his career. The Bulls would face the Magic Johnson Lakers in the finals, and while they did not have Kareem anymore, they were still a very good team. Magic was still in his prime. He averaged 19, 8, and 12 for the series, and Vlade Divac, Sam Perkins, and James Worthy all averaged high teens in points for the series. The series was only 5 games, but a lot of the games were fairly close. Jordan averaged 31 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 11.5 assists, 2.8 steals, and 1.4 blocks on 56% shooting, absolutely stuffing the stat sheet. Jordan would win his first championship and Finals MVP. This was the beginning of the first three-peat. Next season, MJ averaged 36 and 6. Scottie Pippen stepped up his game further, averaging 21, 8, 7, 2, and 1. And the Bulls made it to the finals to face the Portland Trail Blazers, who were led by Clyde Drexler and Terry Porter. Before the finals started, the media started to spin a story about Clyde being a better player than MJ simply because he was a far superior three-point shooter. Because the rivalry of Magic and Bird was gone, with Magic retiring due to HIV and Bird having injury problems, the media wanted to create a new rivalry between MJ and Clyde. But MJ would quickly destroy any idea of a rivalry and destroy the criticism of his three-point shot, saying that the reason that Clyde is a better three-point shooter is because he chooses not to be a better shooter. And he backed up that talk in Game 1, where Jordan scored an NBA Finals record 35 points in the first half. MJ did this by knocking down an NBA Finals record 6 threes in the first half. He would average 36 for the series on 53% shooting, with Clyde only averaging 25 a game on 40% shooting. The Bulls won in 6 games, and of course, MJ walked away with the Finals MVP. Next season, MJ would not three-peat as MVP, with the award going to Charles Barkley, which was unfortunate for Charles because Jordan used this as motivation. So when the Bulls met Barkley's Suns in the NBA Finals, they beat them in 6. A 6-game series where Jordan would average 41 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 6 assists, and walk away with Finals MVP. But during the 1993 playoffs, a controversy arose, where the night before a game versus the Knicks in the conference finals, Jordan was seen in Atlantic City in the middle of the night gambling, and after that, many stories came out of his gambling debts. After this controversy carried over to the offseason, Michael Jordan decided to retire at the age of 29. MJ listed his lack of desire to continue playing basketball as the reason that he retired, then later said it was the death of his father that made him want to quit playing basketball to pursue baseball. His father wanted Jordan to be a baseball player, and MJ hoped to fulfill his dad's wish. But the timing of this retirement with this major controversy sparked a massive conspiracy that the league suspended MJ, but disguised it as a retirement. The main point of emphasis for this conspiracy being this line that MJ said in his retirement press conference.
5 years down the line, if that urge comes back, if the Bulls have me, if David Stern lets me back in the league, I may come back.
If David Stern lets me back in the league, I may come back.
Regardless of why he retired, he did retire. He would play baseball for a year, and about midway through the 1994-95 season, Scottie Pippen invited Michael to a team practice, and the Bulls, who were struggling that season at 31-31, convinced MJ to return to basketball. And MJ announced his return with a 2-word press release, "I'm back." Things were not storybook-like for his initial return, however. MJ only averaged 27 points on 41% shooting in his 17 games that season, and Scottie Pippen, who had been the main scoring option for a year and a half now, had to adjust to being dropped right back into his Robin role, after being the guy for over a year. Because of some adjustment struggles, the Bulls lost to the Orlando Magic, led by the young duo of Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway in a 6-game series. The only playoff series Jordan would lose after surpassing the Pistons. But that somewhat failure that initially came with that series was more motivation for MJ, who trained like crazy in the 95 offseason. The Bulls added defensive and rebounding force Dennis Rodman in the offseason, and the Bulls started the season 41-3 and finished the season with an NBA record at the time 72-10 record. Jordan won his 8th scoring title, averaging 30 points per game, shot a career high from 3, 43%. Granted, the three-point line was shortened for that season, and he would win his 4th MVP award. The Bulls would only lose 3 games all throughout the playoffs, beating the Sonics in the finals in 6 games, with Jordan winning finals MVP. Next season, the Bulls would win 69 games, MJ would lose out on the MVP award to Karl Malone, and just like was the case with Barkley, stealing an MVP from Jordan proved to be a curse in the finals, as Jordan and the Bulls would win in 6 games. This series had some particularly iconic moments from Jordan, including a game winner in Game 1, and the iconic flu game, where Jordan played with flu-like symptoms, scoring 38 points and hitting the game-deciding 3. He would win his 5th Finals MVP. And in Jordan's final season as a Bull, the team would win 62 games. Jordan would win yet another scoring title, averaging 29 points a game at the age of 34. He would win his 5th and final MVP, making it to the finals to face the Utah Jazz once again, beating them in 6 games, hitting the game winner at the end of Game 6.
17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan open. Chicago with the lead.
Winning his 6th ring, 6th Finals MVP, going out with an iconic shot being the last moment of his career. A storybook ending. But Jordan decided to ruin that storybook ending by adding some pretty mediocre and unnecessary chapters to the end, by becoming a Washington Wizard. After a few years as partial owner and president of basketball operations for the Wizards, Jordan being so close to the game brought back his desire to play. So Michael Jordan at the age of 38 decided to return to basketball to play for the Wizards. In his first year, he averaged 23.6 rebounds and 5 assists, shooting 41% from the field. The Wizards would miss the playoffs, and in his last season, Jordan, from the ages of 39 to 40, would average 20 points per game on 45% shooting. He would finally retire for real at the end of the 2003 season.
What's in the bag? Lunch. Big Mac, fries. Play you for it. You and me for my Big Mac. First one to miss, what does the winner eat? No dunking. On me. It's me. Get in there. Off the floor, off the scoreboard, off the bankboard, no rim. Over the second rafter, off the floor, nothing but net. Through the window, off the wall, nothing but net.
What you want is what you get, and McDonald's today.
Off the expressway, over the river, off the billboard, through the window, off the wall, nothing but net.
Michael Jordan may have the most impressive resume of any candidate. 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, 5 regular season MVPs. He made the All-NBA first team 10 times and second team once. He was all-defensive first team 9 times, won defensive player of the year, being one of 4 guards to do so. He won rookie of the year and was a 14-time All-Star, winning the All-Star MVP 3 times. MJ was one of the most lethal scorers to ever play the game. His incredible athleticism allowed him to get to the basket at will, and his mid-range game was one of the best of all time. Off of the pull-up or out of the post, MJ could hit any type of mid-range jumper you gave him, and as a result, he won 10 scoring titles and he's 5th all-time in scoring. Defensively, Michael won Defensive Player of the Year as a guard. He's 2nd all-time in blocks amongst guards behind Dwayne Wade, and he's 3rd in steals. But those are the rankings he has, having retired twice. With adjusted conservative numbers, had he not retired, Jordan would be 1st all-time in scoring with 40,000 plus points, 57th all-time in rebounds, making him 2nd amongst guards behind Jason Kidd. He'd move up to 2nd in steals, and he'd move up to 74th all-time in blocks, making him the only guard in the top 100. So these numbers are worth considering, just like Wilt and Russell's block numbers are worthy of consideration. Jordan's case for GOAT has to be the great combination of championships and individual accomplishments accomplishments that he has. Most candidates have a high amount of one or the other. Wilt didn't win a lot of rings, but his individual accomplishments, both award-wise and statistically, are phenomenal, whereas Russell has the most rings of all time, but his numbers and individual accolades aren't nearly as impressive. With MJ, he has all of the individual accolades, as well as 6 rings. He also never lost on the biggest stage, 6 for 6 in the NBA Finals. He also never played in a Game 7 in the Finals. MJ's clutch factor and killer mentality is also one of the biggest arguments used for Jordan's case for GOAT. MJ was ultra competitive. He was known for wanting to not only beat his opponent, but destroy them. This competitive spirit led to MJ working harder than anyone, which is why he won so much. MJ won on the biggest stage without failure and stacked up other awards as well. But for the other side, Jordan did not win much until Scottie Pippen showed up, and he did not win until the Pistons and Celtics declined. He wasn't winning on the biggest stage until a path opened up for him to get there. There is also the argument that he had weak competition. While Jordan played with Pippen and Rodman for 3 years, both Hall of Famers, he never faced more than 2 prime Hall of Famers in the finals. James Worthy and Magic Johnson in 91, just Clyde Drexler in 92, just Charles Barkley in 93, Gary Payton and Sean Kemp in 96, and John Stockton and Karl Malone. And a lot of those players are not exactly the cream of the crop for Hall of Fame players. Other than Magic, none are commonly considered top 10 players of all time, and many were not even top 5 players in the league when they met Jordan in the finals. And MJ's perfect finals record may not have been so perfect had he not retired. Hakeem always gave the Bulls problems because they never had a center that could come anywhere close to stopping him. There is also the argument that he did not have a lot of competition at his position. Clyde Drexler, Reggie Miller, Joe Dumars, and Mitch Richmond are the 4 best guards of the 90s below MJ, Clyde being the only real superstar at Jordan's position. So MJ had a large collection of individual and team accomplishments, but there are doubts about the competition in which Jordan achieved those things. In Jordan's last few seasons in Chicago, there was a lot of buzz around the league about a kid from Philadelphia who could be the second coming of MJ. That kid from Philly was none other than Kobe Bryant.
Into Bynum, back out Bryant, shot clock at 7, Bryant leads, falling away, puts it in! They need some help. Long run out by Kobe Bryant. Oh! What did I just see? Gotta hurry, it'll be Kobe. Kobe for a deuce, and the win, he got it! He got it for 0.6 of a second to play! And Blake gets it into Kobe. Kobe, good little fake. 3 to tie. 3 to tie. We're tied at 109.
In the 95-96 season, while Jordan and the Bulls were busy making history winning 72 games, there was a lot of buzz coming from Philly. Lower Merion High School was dominating high school ball, led by their senior shooting guard, Kobe Bryant. Bryant led Lower Merion to their first state championship in 53 years, averaging 30.8 points, 12 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 4 steals, and 3.8 blocks for the season. Kobe received national attention for his performance and received several awards. He was named the Naismith High School Player of the Year, Gatorade's National Player of the Year, he was a McDonald's All-American, and he was a USA Today's All-USA First Team Player. After taking Brandy to his senior prom, he then decided to skip college and go straight to the NBA.
No, I have decided to skip college and take my talent to the NBA.
Kobe was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets with the 13th overall pick, but Bryant had no interest in playing for Charlotte. He threatened them not to draft him, saying he would instead play in Italy, but Charlotte drafted him with the intention to trade him to the Lakers for center Vlade Divac. The Lakers moved Vlade to free up space to sign Shaquille O'Neal, a player that could have easily been in this documentary, and thus began what many people would call the greatest duo in NBA history. But it would take some time for this duo to succeed. Kobe wasn't a star day one like many other GOAT candidates. But that was the disadvantage of coming straight out of high school. Kobe took some time to adapt to the NBA 18 years of age. In his rookie season, he averaged only 7.6 points on 41.7% field goal percentage, but that was on only 15 minutes per game off of the bench. The Lakers had one of the best players in the league on their team in Shaq, so they were trying to win, so giving minutes to an 18-year-old wasn't their top priority. But Kobe did participate in and win the 1997 Slam Dunk Contest.
Each player will attempt 2 dunks here on a rotating basis, so Kobe will dunk and then so will the other 2, then they'll do it one more time.
Yeah. Look at him, check him out, check him out. Check him out.
In his second year, Kobe found himself with a more defined role on the team, with Coach Del Harris giving Kobe more minutes and using him as a 6th man, and Kobe could have easily won the 6th Man of the Year award that season, averaging 15 points per game off of the bench, and being voted as an All-Star. Not really deservingly because he made it from being a fan favorite, but an All-Star nonetheless. Next season, Kobe was finally given a starting job, averaging nearly 20 a game. His 4th season, though, was the real start of Bryant's career, and the start of the Lakers' amazing success. Kobe had career best averages of 22 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 4.9 assists on 46.8% field goal percentage, but more importantly, the Lakers were the best they had been post-Magic. This was due to Kobe's improvement, hiring Phil Jackson as the new head coach, and Shaq's MVP season, 29.7 points and 13.6 rebounds on 57% field goal percentage. The Lakers won 67 games and made it to the NBA Finals to face the Reggie Miller-led Indiana Pacers. Kobe struggled mightily in this series. His season average of 22 points per game dropped to 15, and his field goal percentage dropped by 10%. But Kobe was injured all throughout the series, after Jalen Rose intentionally injured him, but Kobe did have a serious contribution to this series. While he was bad for the series, in Game 4, Shaq fouled out in overtime. The Pacers were in prime position to tie the series up 2-2, and considering how badly the Lakers were blown out in Game 5, this game very well could have won the Pacers the series. But Bryant didn't let that happen. With 2 minutes left up 1, a 21-year-old Kobe Bryant closed out the Pacers, scoring 6 points in OT, 2 tough jumpers over his defender.
3-point shooting, but Kobe is going to try to attack. Shaking on Miller and hitting a 2-point basket. He was just inside the line. Gives themselves a chance to take the lead, and you know Kobe is going to go to work again. Here he is over Jackson. How good is this kid?
And the game-deciding tip-in off of the Brian Shaw miss.
Shaw, running one-hander, followed in by Kobe Bryant.
Finishing with 28 for the game, but Shaq would obviously still win Finals MVP with averages of 38 and 17. Next year, Kobe stepped up his game to another level, going from a star to a superstar. Playing with one of the most dominant offensive players in the NBA, Kobe still managed to average 28 a game alongside him, along with 6 rebounds and 5 assists. The Lakers won 56 games and went 15-1 in the playoffs, only losing 1 game to a pissed-off Allen Iverson, and the Lakers would complete the three-peat in 2002. The Lakers would once again make it to the finals easily and play the Nets. They won in a sweep, but 2 of those games were closer than you'd think. Shaq won Finals MVP once again, and it was all downhill from there. After the Lakers won their 3rd straight championship, this is when the narrative of Kobe being carried by Shaq began. Kobe came into the league with the expectations of being the next MJ. Being Shaq's sidekick wasn't the role that people expected him to play. While Kobe was winning, he wasn't doing it as the guy. So the narrative began. Kobe wasn't okay with this. He also wasn't okay with Shaq's laziness. Kobe is known for his impeccable work ethic and asking a lot of his teammates. Shaq was more casual. He relied on his unbelievable size to dominate on the basketball court. He saw his size as all that he needed. Bryant wasn't happy about this, and he was constantly on Shaq's ass about it. This beef led to the Lakers losing to the Spurs in the 2003 playoffs. The Lakers would sign Karl Malone and Gary Payton in a desperate attempt to bring the team back to contention. Kobe would go through a court case in Denver where Shaq gave Kobe no support. The Lakers would make it to the finals again despite their differences, but would lose to a far less talented Pistons team, but also a far more cohesive Pistons team where the players didn't hate each other. Due to money reasons and his beef with Kobe, Shaq would demand a trade and be sent to Miami for Caron Butler and Lamar Odom. This would begin a span of years where Kobe would see a lot of individual success, but the Lakers would see no success. In 3 seasons, 2004 through 2007, Kobe would average 31.8 points combined throughout those 3 seasons, as well as 5.6 rebounds and 5.3 assists. And despite his insane usage, he still shot a very respectable 45% from the field and 34.4% three-point percentage. In his second season without Shaq, Kobe would average an absurd 35.4 points per game. This all was for nothing though, as the Lakers would miss the playoffs in 2005, lose after going up 3-1 to the Suns in the first round in 2006, and be gentlemen swept by the Suns in the first round in 2007. But this really wasn't Kobe's fault. After Shaq was traded, many of the Lakers players retired or left in free agency. Caron Butler wasn't quite at an all-star level yet and would leave after 1 season with the Lakers, only averaging 15 a game. And the Lakers saw players like Smush Parker, Luke Walton, and Kwame Brown consistently in their starting lineups. To be blunt, Kobe had no help. No player, no matter how great, was winning anything with what he had. This is why Kobe would demand a trade after losing to the Suns in 2007.
You're still under contract with them. Are you saying right here on this show that you want to be traded?
Yeah, I would like to be traded, yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not a situation where what if you know, I know before you reportedly said that you would like them to get Jerry West back. Are you saying now emphatically, regardless of what they've done, you want out of Los Angeles?
Yeah, I would like to be traded. And it's tough as it is to say that. It's tough as it is to come to that conclusion. You know, there's no other alternative.
But despite some great offers, the Lakers would not trade Kobe. He would start the 2007-2008 season, putting the Lakers on pace for 50 wins. Then they would get Pau Gasol on top of that, only having to give up Pau's brother Mark, who was a second-round pick, Kwame Brown, 2 scrubs, and 2 first-round picks. The Lakers would win 57 games, Kobe would win his first and only MVP, beat the Spurs 4-1 in the conference finals, but they would lose to the Boston Celtics in the finals. Kobe would average 25, 5, and 5 for the series, but he shot a very poor field goal percentage at just 40%. This loss was what Kobe would call his darkest time as a player. But Kobe and the Lakers would bounce back. They made their way to the finals once again, but unfortunately wouldn't face the Celtics. Instead, the Dwight Howard-led Orlando Magic. But luckily for the Lakers, this team was fairly inexperienced and the Lakers were able to beat them in 5 games. Kobe would win Finals MVP, averaging 32 points and 7 assists per game. Kobe was finally going to get his chance at the Celtics next season though. The Lakers would two-peat, beating the Celtics in 7 games. Kobe won Finals MVP, averaging 28.6 points, 8 rebounds, and 3.9 assists. He did shoot 40% from the field, but everyone on both teams struggled from the field. The Lakers as a whole shot just 41%. With these 2 championships, Kobe had proven that he could win without Shaq, and he got revenge on the Celtics. This would be the peak of Bryant's career. Next season, the Lakers would be swept in the playoffs by the Dallas Mavericks. The Lakers would trade for Chris Paul, but the trade would be quickly vetoed by the league. Then they would trade for Dwight Howard, which unfortunately wasn't vetoed by the league. Kobe would end the 2013 season by tearing his Achilles, and with this look on his face, he knew it, everyone on the court and in the stands knew it, and everyone at home watching knew it. This was the last time we would see Kobe as an elite player. He played 2 more seasons and retired in 2016.
Jalen! Oh, no. Hey, Cole, how you doing? How retirement treating you?
It's great, man. It's great. Just, you know, a little writing, a little investing.
Nice. So I don't know if you saw the thing on Twitter about your statue.
You know, I don't pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, I figured that. Me either.
A drink, Mr. Bryant? Yeah, I'll have a vodka martini.
How many olives would you like?
81.
Really?
Nah, man, I'm just playing. Just 2. Joke for him. He gets it.
Kobe won 5 championships in his career, 1 MVP and 2 Finals MVPs. He made the All-NBA First Team 11 times, Second Team twice, and Third Team twice. He was All-Defensive First Team 9 times and Second Team 3 times. And he was an 18-time All-Star, winning All-Star MVP 4 times. Like Jordan, he was a phenomenal scorer and perimeter defender, and Kobe had the killer instinct that he would brand as the Mamba mentality that MJ did. He was also arguably the hardest working player in NBA history. Jordan certainly worked hard, but he would also party and gamble a lot. Kobe was all business, basketball was his one and only focus, and it could be argued that Kobe earned his success more than any other player. A guy like Wilt was known for being lazy off of the court, but he was blessed with being 7'1". Kobe was of average height by NBA standards, but he worked his ass off to become one of the most lethal scorers the league had ever seen, as well as one of the better defenders the league had ever seen. There is also an argument to be made that Kobe was robbed of an MVP or two. In the 2006 and 2007 season, where Kobe averaged 35 and 32 points, the MVP went to Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki. And in the 2003 season, Kobe averaged 37, 6, and 2 on good efficiency, but lost out to Tim Duncan because Bryant had more help. But Kobe definitely had a case for those 3 MVPs where he came up short. While Kobe does have 5 rings, there are a lot of questions about the legitimacy of them. While no one can take away his last 2 rings, many believe that Kobe was carried by Shaq, or at the very least feel him not being the best player on his team for 3 rings lowers the value of them for his legacy. The counterpoint to that would be any player alongside Shaq in the early 2000s would not have been the best player on the team, or at the very least wouldn't have been the Finals MVP. Shaq in the 2000s consistently matched up against centers who couldn't come close to handling him in the post. Shaq was such a dominant force that there was no stopping him. Even Dikembe Mutombo was dominated down low because even though he was a great shot blocker, he didn't have the strength or stamina to contain him inside. Offensively, giving the ball to Shaq in the early 2000s was the best play in basketball, a better play than a Kobe isolation or even a Jordan isolation, a LeBron pick and roll, or a Larry Bird three-pointer. The point being, winning Finals MVP next to Shaq was next to impossible. Bryant performed at Finals MVP levels for 2 out of those 3 championships, being injured in 2000. He averaged 25, 8, and 6 in 2001, and 27, 6, and 5 on 51% shooting in 2002. Those are Finals MVP level stats. Shaq just so happened to average 33, 16, 5 assists, and 4.5 blocks in 2001, and 26, 12, and 3 in 2002. There was no winning Finals MVP for Kobe playing alongside Shaq. But at the same time, that also means that Kobe was playing with the best player in the league for 3 years, so that's certainly better help than anyone else on this list. So Kobe was one of the hardest workers ever, one of the best scorers ever, but he fell short on the MVP ladder many times, and he wasn't the best player for 3 out of his 5 championships. Through Kobe's reign in the NBA, there was only one player who was also constantly in the conversation for best player in the NBA over Kobe, and that player was Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan had a very interesting start to his basketball career. He didn't follow the traditional path. He originally started off his career as an athlete trying to become an Olympic swimmer, but after Hurricane Hugo destroyed the only Olympic-sized pool in St. Croix, which was the Virgin Island Duncan lived on, Tim had to practice swimming in the ocean. But he wasn't too big of a fan of that because 1, beach conditions aren't the same as an Olympic swimming pool, and 2, Duncan had a serious fear of sharks. So this led to Duncan losing his passion for swimming and switching over to basketball. He played for his high school and really struggled a lot initially. Though he was really tall, he picked up the game a lot later in life than most. But after a few seasons, he started in his senior year averaging 25 a game. He wasn't recruited by big schools like Duke or Kentucky, but he did get a scholarship with Wake Forest. Duncan's lack of flash but incredible reliability was established early with Wake Forest, and he had a great freshman campaign. but it was his sophomore season where Duncan would establish himself as a top-tier prospect. He led the Deacons to an ACC championship. Duncan that season averaged 17 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 blocks. He was all ACC first team and Defensive Player of the Year. In his junior season, he averaged 19 and 12, was once again Defensive Player of the Year as well as the ACC Player of the Year. The Deacons won the ACC title, but in the Sweet 16, Duncan caught the flu and they lost one game from the Final Four. In his senior year, he'd averaged 21 points, 15 rebounds, and 3.3 blocks on 60% shooting. He won the John Wooden Award and was the Naismith College Player of the Year. However, the Deacons failed to win the third straight ACC title. The San Antonio Spurs would take Tim Duncan first overall in the 1997 draft. Just like Magic Johnson, Duncan was drafted into a uniquely great situation. With Magic, the Lakers lucked into a great pick from a trade made years before drafting Magic. For the Spurs, David Robinson, their superstar center, went down with an injury that kept him out for the entire season. So the team was really bad for the 96-97 season and ended up with the first pick. Duncan joining the Admiral, creating the Twin Towers. Having two athletic defensive superstar big men down low meant the paint was locked down. Duncan as a rookie averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. He was an all-star, all-NBA first team, and made the all-NBA defensive second team, and he won Rookie of the Year. The Spurs would make it into the second round of the playoffs, losing to the Karl Malone John Stockton Jazz. In his sophomore season, Duncan would put up similar stats to his rookie year, but he would establish himself as the best player on the team. The Spurs would see a lot more success with this change. The Spurs would make it to the NBA Finals and face, admittingly, a fairly easy opponent. They faced the 8th seeded Knicks, the only 8th seed to ever make the NBA Finals, a team led by Latrell Sprewell and Allen Houston. The Spurs would win in 5 games, with Duncan averaging 27, 14, and 2 blocks on 54% shooting, winning Finals MVP in just his second season. In his third year, Duncan bumped up his averages a bit, but got injured before the postseason and didn't get to play in the playoffs. Next year, he maintained similar averages, was All-NBA first team and defensive first team, but the Spurs would lose to the Kobe and Shaq Lakers in a sweep. In the offseason, restricted free agency had not yet been implemented during the collective bargaining agreement, and Duncan strongly considered signing with the Orlando Magic, who had laid out a plan in free agency to add Tracy McGrady, Grant Hill, and Duncan. The Spurs were really lacking in talent besides for Duncan, as Robinson was 36. The Magic were offering a chance to dominate a weak Eastern Conference and be a legit competitor with the Lakers, who looked unbeatable in the Western Conference. Duncan was very close to signing, and even told Greg Popovich that he would sign with the Magic. But because of small details like Magic coach Doc Rivers telling Duncan he couldn't have his family on the team plane, Duncan decided to stay with the Spurs. His 5th year would be the best statistical year of his career. He averaged 25.5 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2.5 blocks. He would win his first MVP, but upon matching up with the Lakers again, the Spurs would lose in 5 games. David Robinson was aging, and he could not handle Shaq in the post. And Tony Parker wasn't able to be a big contributor yet, being a rookie. Duncan was pretty much on his own. He'd win MVP back-to-back in the 02-03 season, averaging 23, 13, 4 assists, and 3 blocks on 51% shooting. The Spurs would win 60 games despite Duncan having little help. Tony Parker was a 15-point-per-game scorer. Manu was a rookie. David Robinson was playing his last year. Steven Jackson was very inefficient, and Bruce Bowen was pretty much just a 3-and-D guy. Duncan was very much carrying this team. Despite the regular season success, Duncan and the Spurs would have to surpass the hurdle that was the Lakers. Again, Duncan would find himself carrying the load. He led the team in points, rebounds, assists, and was 3rd in field goal percentage despite taking 40 more shots than the next in line. He also was often the guy who had to guard Shaq. He averaged 28, 12, and 5 on 53% shooting, and the Spurs would beat the Kobe Shaq Lakers in 6 games. Duncan closing out Game 6 with 37 points and 16 rebounds. Duncan single-handedly beat one of the greatest duos ever, Beef or No. It was one of the most impressive feats of his career. The Spurs would beat the Mavericks in the conference finals in a series where Duncan would average 28 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. And in the finals, matched up against the New Jersey Nets, Duncan would average 24, 17, 5 assists, and 5 blocks. And in Game 6, he would nearly put up a quadruple-double, putting up 21 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and 8 blocks. David Robinson also put up 17 rebounds in his final game. Duncan would be named Finals MVP. Next year, the Spurs would lose to the Lakers in a tough series, where the Lakers would turn the tides in Game 5. Duncan hit an impossible shot to take the lead.
To Duncan. He gets doubled. Shaq all over him. He gets away, a fadeaway. He makes it with 4:10 left. Unbelievable.
But Derek Fisher would hit an impossible shot with 0.4 seconds remaining.
Here they go. They get it to Fisher. He scores! Derek Fisher scores at the buzzer.
Now, this shot was pretty much impossible for Fisher to get off in 0.4 seconds, but the league allowed it despite the Spurs filing an appeal. Duncan would fall off a bit statistically in the 04-05 season, but Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili would both average 16 points a game, with Parker averaging 6 assists a game, and Bruce Bowen was still locking down on defense and shooting 40% from 3. The Spurs made it to the finals with a more refined team, and they would beat the team that formerly beat the Lakers in the finals, the Detroit Pistons, in a 7-game series. Duncan averaged 20, 14, and 2, and Ginobili contributed 19, 6, and 4 for the series. Duncan shot poorly from the field, being guarded by Ben Wallace, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, but he still won the Finals MVP. In the following postseason, the Mavericks would beat the Spurs in 7 games, only winning Game 7 by 8 points. Dirk and Duncan had a hell of a battle. Duncan averaged 32, 12, and 2.5 blocks, and Dirk averaged 27 and 13, but Dirk ultimately had more help on his team. In 2007, the Spurs only lost 4 games all throughout the playoffs, sweeping LeBron's Cavaliers in the finals, but Duncan would not be named Finals MVP as it went to Tony Parker, who averaged 24.5 points on 57% shooting. But after this, Duncan and the Spurs would go through 6 years of playoff disappointment, losing 4-1 to the Lakers in the conference finals, losing 4-1 to the Mavs, 4-2 to the Mavs, 4-2 to the Grizzlies, 4-2 to the OKC Thunder, and in 2013, the Spurs would make it to the NBA Finals, but as we know, the Spurs had the series all but won in Game 6, but Ray Allen would hit potentially the greatest shot in basketball history.
James catches, puts up a 3. Won't go. Rebound box. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
After this crushing loss, the Spurs were motivated to come back and get revenge. By this point, the Spurs were no longer a team built around Duncan. Instead, they were a team with no clear best player, guys who knew their role and played it well, and they had potentially the greatest ball movement of any team ever. The Spurs started the playoffs off rough, barely beating the 8th seeded Mavericks in 7 games, but they gentlemen swept the Blazers in the second round and beat OKC in 6 games where Duncan averaged 18 and 10. In the finals, Duncan would average 15 and 10, and the Spurs would manhandle the Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade was on his last legs, or more accurately, his last knees, and LeBron was pretty much on his own, and it didn't help that 22-year-old Spur Kawhi Leonard stepped up his game, played great defense, and averaged 18 points and 6 rebounds on 61% shooting. With those numbers, Kawhi of course won Finals MVP over Tim Duncan, but Duncan got his 5th and final championship. Duncan would play 2 more uneventful seasons and retire at the age of 39.
You excited the week of greatness is back at Foot Locker?
A week of the sickest releases, everyone's excited about it.
Man, that is exciting. T. Rose, I know it's crazy, right?
I gotta call Tim.
Tim Duncan.
Yo, Tim. The week of greatness is back at Foot Locker.
No way. That's insane. I'm bouncing off the walls.
Never gets this excited.
I can't contain myself. I just knocked over a plant celebrating.
Tim Duncan was a textbook team player and winner. 5 championships in 3 different decades, winning them in different roles. In '99, he was a budding young superstar surrounded by veteran talent. In 2003 and 2005, he was now the veteran star player, carrying a team of young guys. In 2007, he was still the best player on the team, but he was more than happy to share the spotlight with Parker and Manu. And in 2014, he was the old wise veteran player player that still contributed on the court, but more than anything, he was just an amazing leader. Tim Duncan, more than any other candidate besides for maybe Bill Russell, did not care what he had to do. All he cared about doing was winning. If he had to step down his role in the offense, he was happy to do it if that's what was required to win. If he had to be a dominant player and lockdown defender, he would do that for you. Tim Duncan was an unselfish winner. Though it wasn't important to him for his individual accolades, he was a 2-time MVP, 3-time Finals MVP. He made 10 All-NBA first teams, was second team 3 times and third team twice, All-Defensive first team 8 times and second team 7 times. He won Rookie of the Year and was a 15-time All-Star winning MVP once. Winning at every stage of his career and sacrificing some of his stats along the way is Duncan's biggest case for GOAT. After all, basketball is a team sport, and again, besides for Russell, no other player at Duncan's level was that unselfish. But on the flip side, some would argue that to be truly great, you need to win without sacrificing your individual greatness. And it's not a great sign that one of the ways that the Spurs continued dominating was by giving Duncan less of a role in the offense. And because of these sacrifices that Duncan often made, his statistics do not shine on the level of most of the candidates. So while Duncan was impressive as a winner, his statistics are lacking because of the sacrifices that he made, while in comparison, many other greats won just as much while maintaining their individual accolades. Kobe and Duncan were both in their primes. A new name came into the mix in between that period. That name was LeBron James. As a freshman at St. Vincent St. Mary, LeBron averaged 21 points and 6 rebounds. As a 14-year-old, the Fighting Irish would go 27-0 and win a state title. In his sophomore season, he would average 25, 7, and 6. And LeBron became such a national sensation that St. Vincent St. Mary had to play home games at the University of Akron to fit the ticket demand. LeBron would be named Ohio's Mr. Basketball. The Irish would go 26-1 and repeat as state champions. As a junior, the story of the greatest high school player career ever spread even more. He would appear in Slam Magazine, be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He averaged 29 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. He was named Ohio Mr. Basketball for the second year in a row, be USA Today's All-USA First Team, and he would be the first junior to ever be named Gatorade's National Player of the Year. Despite his individual success, the Irish would lose 4 games this season and lose the Division II championship. Because of his legends spreading in his senior year, LeBron and the Fighting Irish would travel around the country to play nationally ranked teams. James averaged 31.6 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 4.6 assists. For the third straight year, he was named Ohio Mr. Basketball, and the Irish would win their third division title in 4 years. And LeBron would then declare for the NBA draft, where in a storybook fashion, he would be drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and LeBron became the hometown hero. This would be both a blessing and the worst thing that could ever happen to LeBron. His first stint in Cleveland would be a non-stop carry job for James. In his rookie year, LeBron defended the hype that he received in high school. Many players collapse into mediocrity with less hype. LeBron more than rose up to the challenge. Though he certainly had some issues as a rookie, he was fairly inefficient and averaged too many turnovers, but the good of his rookie year far outweighed that bad. He averaged 20.9 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 5.9 assists on 41.7% field goal percentage. The Cavs would miss the playoffs, and he would not be named an All-Star, but he would win Rookie of the Year over Carmelo Anthony. In his second season, LeBron would blossom even more and be named an All-Star, but in his third season, LeBron put up a career-high 31.4 points per game, along with 7 rebounds and 6.6 assists. LeBron came second in MVP voting behind Steve Nash. The Cavaliers would make it to the playoffs for the first time since '98, but they would lose to the Detroit Pistons in the second round. Next season, the Cavs would win 50 games, be the second seed in the East, face the Pistons in the conference finals, and in an unbelievable performance, LeBron would put up 48, 9, and 7 in Game 5. He scored 29 out of 30 of Cleveland's last points and hit the game-winning layup.
5 seconds, 4, 3, James scores with 2.2 to go. The Cavaliers lead 109-107, and the Pistons call for time. 48 points for LeBron James. He has scored the last 25 points for Cleveland, 29 of the last 30.
In his fourth season in the league, with little to no help on his team, LeBron had made it to the NBA Finals. But facing the juggernaut San Antonio Spurs, led by Tim Duncan, the Cavs had a 0 chance, and they would lose in a sweep. This playoff run LeBron went on would basically sum up the entirety of his time on the Cavaliers. Individual success that unfortunately led to losing in the playoffs, because of the lack of talent alongside him. He didn't get the advantage of being drafted onto a team with Kareem or Shaq, or ending up with a guy like Scottie Pippen or Tony Parker and Ginobili. LeBron never got another guy alongside him in his first stint in Cleveland, and the addition of the Big Three Boston Celtics and the Dwight Howard Orlando Magic didn't exactly help. So from 2007 to 2010, LeBron dominated, winning 2 MVP awards in 2009 and 2010, but again, due to a lack of help, the Cavs didn't win much, and in the second round of the 2010 playoffs versus the Boston Celtics, LeBron essentially gave up on the team when he realized that he, once again, was in an uphill battle, where despite his amazing play, he would inevitably lose. LeBron would go live on TV and announce the next chapter of his career.
The answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
LeBron was joining Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami to force the Miami Big Three, but before he would even get onto the court, he immediately shot himself in the foot by being a part of this party where they celebrated like they already won. And in this party, he said this:
to win championships. Not 1, championships.
Not 2.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
The Big Three era in Miami would get off to a rough start. LeBron, Wade, and Bosh struggled to fit together initially. LeBron also struggled mightily with the criticism that came his way for his decision because the move he made at the time was unprecedented. LeBron would decide to embrace this villain role the NBA fan base had assigned him, and the Miami Heat would be the second seed in the East behind the Derrick Rose Bulls. The Heat would beat those Bulls with LeBron effectively shutting down Rose, and they would head to the NBA Finals to face the underdog underdog Dallas Mavericks, who were led by Dirk Nowitzki. This series would be the biggest stain on LeBron's legacy and his case for GOAT. LeBron averaged a measly 17.8 points, 7.2 rebounds, 6.8 assists, and 4 turnovers on 47% shooting. Not a terrible stat line for an average player, but for a superstar who most would have considered the best player in the league, it was pitiful. LeBron was even outscored by Jason Terry, the sixth man on the Mavericks, who averaged 18 points on 49.4% field goal percentage. Not only did LeBron get outscored by Terry, but after shutting down Derrick Rose, somehow he was the reason many times for Terry scoring, consistently getting burned by a sixth man. To make matters worse, LeBron would put up 8 points on 27% shooting in Game 4, where the Heat could have gone up 3-1. The series would be the lowest point in LeBron's career. All the criticism of him being unable to win in Cleveland only got worse when he was unable to win with 2 All-Star teammates versus a team with only 1 All-Star. LeBron would head into the 2011-12 season with only one goal: prove them all wrong. The first step was no longer trying to be the villain. LeBron was so focused on being the bad guy that he was no longer being himself. He regained his sense of joy playing like he used to. He would win his third MVP with averages of 27.1 points, 7.9 rebounds, 6.2 assists, and 1.9 steals on 53% shooting. In the second round versus the Pacers, Chris Bosh went down with an abdominal injury, which made it challenging for the top-heavy Heat to beat the aging Boston Celtics. In Game 5, Paul Pierce would hit a game-winning 3 in LeBron's eyes to go up 2-2.
Pierce for 3. It's good. Paul Pierce from way downtown. And Boston leads by 4.
Once again, LeBron found himself in a situation where he was going to lose to an underdog team, but this time LeBron responded. In Game 6, he put up 45 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists on 73.1% shooting. The Heat would finish off the series in Game 7 and head to the finals to face the young OKC Thunder. The Heat would win in 5 games, LeBron would win his first championship, he'd win Finals MVP on 28.6 points, 10.3 rebounds, and 7.4 assists on 47% shooting. He would finally achieve his goal of being a champion. LeBron would only capitalize on this in the 2012-13 season. This is the season that most would agree was LeBron's best. He would average 26.8 points, 8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1.7 steals, nearly a block, a career-high 40% from 3, and his second-best career field goal percentage of 56.5%. He'd win his 4th MVP, lead his team to the finals to face the San Antonio Spurs. Going into Game 6, the Spurs were up 3-2. Going into the 4th quarter, the Heat were down 10, and it was looking like the Spurs would be walking away with the championship. But LeBron would once again respond with 16 points in the 4th quarter on 70% shooting, as well as 2 assists, but it would be Ray Allen who saved the game with a step back to the 3-point line off of the Chris Bosh offensive rebound that came from LeBron's miss.
James catches, puts up a 3. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His 3-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
In overtime, LeBron would make sure that the Heat would finish it out with 2 points and 2 assists, which doesn't sound like much, but only 8 points in total were scored by the Heat in overtime, so that was 6 out of 8 points. In Game 7, LeBron would drop 27, 12, and 4, winning the series for the Heat and winning Finals MVP. Next season, the Heat would struggle with injuries, the Heat would lose to the Spurs in the finals, and LeBron made his second decision. This time returning to Cleveland to team up with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love after the Cavs traded Andrew Wiggins for him. Just like Miami, the Cavs struggled at first, but after trading for some role players and getting their chemistry figured out, the Cavaliers established themselves as the best team in the East. Even though the Atlanta Hawks had a better record, most would have agreed that the Cavs were going to the finals, and the Cavs proved that by beating them in the conference finals on a sweep. They would face the Warriors in the finals, but unfortunately, they had no Kevin Love thanks to Kelly Olynyk dislocating his shoulder, and Kyrie Irving went back down with an injury that previously bothered him in the second round versus the Bulls. So LeBron was essentially by himself versus the Warriors, with Timothy Mozgov being the second best player for the Cavs. LeBron put up 35, 13, and 9, but because of all the defensive pressure that was on him, he only shot 39.8% from the field. The Warriors won in 6 games, but next year LeBron would get a chance at revenge. Kyrie and Kevin Love were completely healthy for the series, but this wasn't the same Warriors team. The Dubs went 73-9, breaking the record for wins in a season. Stephen Curry was the first unanimous MVP in NBA history, and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green with another season as star players improved immensely. This was a juggernaut of a team, but the Cavs were healthy and there would be no more excuses for losing. The series would not start out in Cleveland's favor. The Warriors would infamously go up 3-1. It looked like LeBron would once again lose in the finals and have a record of 2-5 in the finals. Not a great look, but in Game 4, LeBron and Kyrie Irving both put up 41 points. LeBron also had 16 rebounds and 7 assists to go along with it, and they beat the Warriors 112-97. Game 6, the Warriors once again failed to close out the Cavaliers. LeBron once again dropped 41 with 8 rebounds and 11 assists on 59% shooting. The Cavs beat the Warriors by 14. After this game, the thought of a comeback was there. No team had ever blown a 3-1 lead in the finals, just like no team had won 73 games or had a unanimous MVP. Heading into Game 7, there was no pressure on the Cavs and LeBron. Though losing another finals would have been bad for his legacy, forcing a Game 7 after going down 3-1 was accomplishment enough to get by. But all of the pressure was on Golden State. Pressure not to choke. This was the lowest scoring game combined between the two teams. LeBron had an off shooting night, shooting just 37.5%. The Cavs just barely shot over 40%, and the Warriors shot 38%. James had a 27-point triple-double with 11 rebounds and 11 assists. With 4.5 minutes left, both teams went on a massive scoring drought. The game was tied at 89 for 3.5 minutes. The Warriors finally got an opportunity to score off of a Kyrie miss. They got out on the fast break. Curry passed it to Andre Iguodala, and well, you know what happened. Two possessions later, the ball was in Kyrie Irving's hands, and he hit the game-deciding 3 over the unanimous MVP.
Irving and Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good! Kyrie Irving from downtown! And the Cavaliers by 3!
Curry brought the ball up, tried to tie the game over Kevin Love. He missed. LeBron hit the free throw to seal the game, and Cleveland had successfully came back from being down 3-1. This would be the most impressive accomplishment of LeBron's career, and it would be the high point of his career. Not only did he win in one of the greatest final series of all time, but he also finally fulfilled his promise to bring a championship to Cleveland. And of course, he would be the finals MVP with averages of 29.7 points, 11.3 rebounds, 8.9 assists, 2.6 steals, and 2.3 blocks on 49.4% field goal percentage and 37% from 3. Unfortunately, after this, the Warriors would sign Kevin Durant, the player many considered to be the second best player in the league behind LeBron. With Curry, Clay, Green, and Durant, there was no chance at winning. For the next 2 seasons, the Cavs would lose in the finals in 2017. Kyrie would demand a trade and head to the Celtics. LeBron would carry a piss-poor roster to the finals and lose in 4 games. And most recently, he signed with the Lakers and is now looking to build something in LA to hopefully add to his astounding resume.
Today for Show and Tell, I brought my uncle LeBron, who is NBA Rookie of the Year. Did you win the championship?
No,
Yeah, but you made the playoffs.
I just missed them.
Let's look at the froggy again.
LeBron's dominance and stranglehold on the NBA from 2010 to 2018 cannot be overstated. This decade of basketball excellence has not been done on that level before. Bill Russell's Celtics made the finals many times in a row, but Bill was on the same team with the same level of help, with the same coach and same everything. LeBron went back and forth between many different situations plenty of times, having an undeniable superstar with Dwayne Wade in 2011 and 12, but Chris Bosh, who struggled to fit in, and 2013 and 14, Wade was on the decline, but Chris Bosh now had a defined role. In Cleveland, he had to adjust to a new environment and a new team, and in 2018, he had to carry a garbage team to the finals. But as soon as he went to the Lakers, he missed out on the playoffs, which feeds into the other side, which says that the weakness of the Eastern Conference is the reason why LeBron made it to the finals so many times. However, the opposition would say, look at the Eastern Conference in 2019. As soon as LeBron is gone, suddenly the East is great. So it could be argued that he is the reason that the East looks so great. The East didn't look particularly strong under Jordan either. LeBron has won 3 championships over his career, 4 MVPs, 3 Finals MVPs. He earned All-NBA First Team honors 12 12 times, second team twice, was all-defensive first team 5 times, second team once, rookie of the year, and he is a 15-time All-Star winning MVP 3 times. But what's important to acknowledge is that LeBron is the only candidate who has yet to retire from the NBA. He's still active, so like we did with MJ's retirement numbers and Russell and Wilt's block numbers, we will do some conservative speculation. We're going to assume that LeBron plays until the age of 38. Many think he could play till 40, which is probably true, but we're being conservative here. That's 4 more seasons. We'll assume he averages 70 games a season, averaging 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.7 blocks for those 4 seasons. That leads to a total of 39,061 points, which would place him first all time, though it's less points than Jordan's hypothetical. LeBron is likely to achieve this mark, whereas Jordan is just a hypothetical, unless he wants to come out of retirement again at the age of 60. It would give him 10,416 assists, which places him third all time, though it would be fourth with Magic's hypothetical numbers. It would give him 10,790 rebounds, 32nd all time, 2,126 blocks, which is 17th all time, 2,294 steals, which places him at 7th all time. So LeBron is on pace to be first in scoring, third in assists, 32nd all time in rebounds, 14th in blocks, and 7th in steals. His name will be all over the all-time lists. We will also give LeBron 4 more All-NBA second team selections as well as All-Star appearances. His statistical impact and versatility is unquestionable. Lethal scorer, amazing passer, great rebounder, a good to great versatile defender up until the last 3 seasons. LeBron is to most the most versatile player of all time. No player is as good at every aspect of the game as LeBron. However, his record in the finals as well as the 2011 finals is a pretty big stain on his career, but some would argue that 2007, 2017, and 2018 are excusable. Beating the Spurs in 2007 was next to impossible. Beating KD, Steph, Clay, and Green in 2017 with Kyrie Irving was pretty damn unlikely, so beating them in 2018 without Kyrie, pretty much impossible. So LeBron has the statistical dominance, but his dominance in the East is at the very least questionable, and his finals record is pretty bad. So with every single candidate's case now laid out, looking at each player at an individual level, let's now look at them in comparison to each other. Now, when you're comparing 9 players, it can get pretty messy, so it will need to be organized into categories: accomplishments and career numbers, and we will be ranking their level of help. Starting with accomplishments, for championships, Bill Russell ranks first with 13, Jordan and Kareem are tied for second with 6, Kobe, Duncan, and Magic are tied for third with 5, LeBron James and Larry Bird are fourth with 3, and Wilt Chamberlain comes in 5th with 2 championships. For MVPs, Kareem comes in with an NBA record 6 MVPs, Jordan and Russell both have 5, which is second, LeBron and Wilt are third with 4 MVPs, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson both have 3, Tim Duncan has 2 for 5th place, and Kobe comes in last with just 1 MVP. Jordan has an NBA record 6 Finals MVPs, but we will give Russell the first spot with 7 Finals MVPs because the award didn't exist in Russell's time, and it's fair to assume that he would have won at least 7 out of 11 potential Final MVPs. So Russell is first with 7, Jordan has 6, Duncan, Magic, and LeBron all have 3, and there's a 3-way tie for third, so Kobe, Bird, and Kareem have 2. For Defensive Player of the Year, we speculated that Russell would win 4 and Wilt would win 2, so Russell ranks first with 4, Wilt ranks second with 2, and Jordan ranks third with 1. Everybody else never won a Defensive Player of the Year award. Here are their All-Star games in comparison, their All-NBA team selections, and All-Defensive team selections. Statistically, Kareem has the most points, but LeBron will more than likely pass him, so we will give him number 1 with an asterisk, and Kareem 2. Next is Kobe at 3, Jordan at 4, next is Wilt Chamberlain, Tim Duncan, then Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, and then finally Bill Russell. For rebounds, Wilt and Russell are the top dogs, both with over 20,000 rebounds. Kareem is third, Duncan comes in 6th, then Larry Bird. However, LeBron will pass him, so he is at 5, and Bird at 6, Kobe at 7, Jordan at 8, though he would have been higher had he not retired, and Magic comes in 9, but same thing, if he wasn't forced to retire, he would be a lot higher here. For assist, first is Magic by a decent margin, adjusted numbers or no, but LeBron would be past his real number, but not his no retirement number. So LeBron would be first, then Magic, then a good bit down the list is Kobe Bryant at 3, Larry Bird at 4, Kareem is actually 5th, MJ at 6, then Wilt, Duncan, and Bill Russell. For career averages, we will break down career averages and prime averages. Jordan and Wilt are tied for career points per game. Then we have LeBron, Kobe, Kareem, Larry Bird, Magic, Duncan, and Bill Russell comes in last with just 15 points per game. For prime points per game, Wilt Chamberlain comes in first with an absurd 36 points per game, Jordan in second with 32 points per game, Kobe and Kareem are tied for third with 28.1, then comes LeBron, Bird, Duncan, Magic, and Russell. Wilt is first in career rebounds per game, then Bill Russell, then Kareem, then Duncan, Bird, LeBron, Magic, Jordan, and Kobe. For prime rebounds, the list is in the same order. Wilt is first, averaging just one more rebound than Russell, who is second, then Kareem with 14 a game, then Tim Duncan with nearly 12 a game, Larry Bird in the double digits, then LeBron, Magic, Jordan, and Kobe. For career assists, Magic Johnson is first, then LeBron, Bird, Jordan, Kobe, Wilt, Bill Russell, Kareem, and Tim Duncan. And here are prime assists per game. And finally, here is career efficiency using true shooting percentage. Now we will rank the level of help that each player had. The rankings will be fairly simple. Hall of Famers will be 5 points worth of help, All-Stars are 3 points, and good but not quite All-Star level players and role players will be worth 1 point. An example of a player like that would be Charles Oakley with MJ. Also, some guys were All-Stars or even Hall of Famers, but were out of their prime when they were on the candidate's team, or they were only there for a few years, like George Gervin was for MJ. Some will require context. A good player could be a guy that plays his role as, let's just say, an 8 to 10 point and 8 to 10 rebound player, or is a great defender, a really good shooter, a good scorer who wasn't quite a star. Also 10 points for a bona fide superstar, like they were top 5 in the NBA at the time that they were teammates with a candidate. And there is also a 1.5 multiplier for players who spent their career on one team, because when a player is on the same team, they usually don't play with as many stars, but they just play with 1 or 2 for their careers, like Magic for example. And future Hall of Famers will be accounted for as well. So starting with Bill Russell, he played with 9 Hall of Famers: Bob Cousy, Bill Sharman, Tom Heinsohn, Frank Ramsey, Sam Jones, Casey Jones, Tom Sanders, John Havlicek, and Don Nelson. That is a total of 45 Hall of Famer points. Bailey Howell is a Hall of Famer, but that is because of his time in Detroit before becoming a Celtic. He was a one-time All-Star for the Celtics, so he fits into the just an All-Star category, and he's really the only normal All-Star, so that's 3 more points. For good non-All-Star players, Russell played with Wally Knowles, who was a former All-Star but just a top-tier role player for the Celtics, and Larry Siegfried, so that's 2 more points. So Bill Russell has 75 points worth of help after the 1.5 multiplier. Next is Wilt Chamberlain. For Hall of Famers, Tom Galla, Guy Rogers, Paul Arzon, Nate Thurmond, Hal Greer, Chet Walker, Jerry West, and Elgin Baylor, which is 40 Hall of Fame points. For All-Stars, Woody Salisbury, Tom Messery, Luke Jackson, and Larry Costello. For good not quite All-Star players, Al Attles, Willie Knowles, Wayne Hightower, Paul Newman, Red Kerr, Wally Jones, Mel Counts, Happy Harrison, Flynn Robinson, and Jim McMillan. So that is 62 help points for Wilt. Next is Kareem, who played with a superstar in Magic Johnson, which is 10 points. For Hall of Famers, we have Oscar Robertson, Jamal Wilkes, and James Worthy. For All-Stars, we have Flynn Robinson, Bob Dandridge, Jim Price, and Norm Nixon. For good players, we have John McLaughlin, Greg Smith, Lucius Allen, Curtis Pelly, George Thompson, Cornwell Walker, Gail Goodrich, who is out of his prime, KZ Russell, Kermit Washington, Adrian Dantley, who is a Hall of Famer but wasn't even an All-Star on LA, Lou Hudson, who played in LA for his last 2 seasons, Michael Cooper, Jim Chones, a way out of prime Spencer Haywood, Bob McAdoo, Byron Scott, AC Green, Michael Thompson, and Orlando Woolridge. That is a total of 56 help points. For For Magic, he obviously had Kareem, which is 10 points, James Worthy as a Hall of Famer as well as Jamal Wilkes. Norm Nixon is the only All-Star. For good players, Jim Chones, Spencer Haywood, Bob McAdoo, Byron Scott, AC Green, Michael Thompson, Orlando Woolridge, Michael Cooper, Sam Perkins, and Vlade Divac. That's a total of 44 points. Larry Bird played with 3 Hall of Famers, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, and Dennis Johnson. That's 15 points. Tiny Archibald was a Hall of Famer, but only a 12-7 point guard on the Celtics, but he was an All-Star 3 times. 1 year of Dave Cowens, who is a Hall of Famer, but he was out of his prime, and it was just 1 year, so just an All-Star. Danny Ainge was a one-time All-Star, and Reggie Lewis was a one-time All-Star in Bird's last year. Rest in peace. Cedric Maxwell averaged 15-7, but was never an All-Star. Bill Walton was out of his prime for the Celtics, but still a great six-man. Jim Paxson in the last few years of his career. Ed Pickney, Kevin Gamble was a 14-point-per-game scorer for Bird's last 2 seasons. Brian Shaw was a 14-point-per-game scorer for 1 season in Boston, and John Bagley averaged 7-7 in Bird's last season. That's 57 help points. From Michael Jordan, for Hall of Famers, he played with Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, and he never played with a guy who was just an All-Star. Orlando Woolridge and Quentin Daly were both 16-17 point scorers in the first few years of Jordan's career. Steve Johnson, Dave Corzin, George Iceman Gervin averaged 16 points per game in the final year of his career playing with rookie MJ. Sidney Green was a 13-8 power forward. Charles Oakley was a double-double enforcer. John Paxson, Sam Vincent, Bill Cartwright was a solid center. Horace Grant was a one-time All-Star, but only in the season where MJ was retired. BJ Armstrong was a really good shooting point guard. Tony Kukoc was a great six-man. Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, Luke Longley, Rip Hamilton was a 20-point-per-game scorer in MJ's first year with the Wizards, and Larry Hughes averaged 13, 5, and 3 on the Wiz. But with MJ, the multiplier gets complicated because to most people, the Wizards' years really don't count all that much, and not giving him the multiplier would seem cheap, so we will do the multiplier for his 13th season with the Bulls, but not multiply the 2 Wizards guys. That's a total of 41 help points for MJ. For Kobe, he had a superstar in Shaq. Pau Gasol will more than likely become a Hall of Famer. He has the overseas resume to match an already solid NBA resume. Eddie Jones was an All-Star, as well as Nick Van Exel, and even though he was disappointing in LA, Dwight Howard was an All-Star. Eldon Campbell was a 14-9-2 block power forward. Robert Horry was a 7-7 stretch 4. Glenn Rice was a 16-point-per-game scorer. Rick Fox was a 3-and-D wing. Derek Fisher, Samaki Walker was a 7-7-1 power forward. Gary Payton was out of his prime, but still really good. Away out of prime, Karl Malone. Horace Grant, Caron Butler, Lamar Odom, Chucky Atkins, Chris Mim, Andrew Bynum. Trevor Ariza was a good 3-and-D wing. Metta World Peace was an even better 3-and-D wing. Steve Nash for 60 games. And in Kobe's last year, Jordan Clarkson, D'Angelo Russell, and Julius Randle were all solid players. That is a total of 66 points. For Tim Duncan, obviously David Robinson was a Hall of Famer, and Manu Ginobili as well as Tony Parker will be Hall of Famers. Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge were both All-Stars towards the end of Duncan's career, but Kawhi will more than likely end up in the Hall of Fame, so we will label him as a Hall of Famer, but LaMarcus Aldridge may miss out on it, and he wasn't at his Hall of Fame level on the Spurs with Duncan, where his real prime was on the Blazers, so he will just get the All-Star label. Avery Johnson was a really solid point guard, bringing in 12 points and 7 assists a game over 7 seasons with the Spurs. Vinny Del Negro, Derek Anderson, Bruce Bowen, Brent Barry was a great shooter, Michael Finley, Roger Mason, George Hill, Richard Jefferson, DeJuan Blair, Gary Neal, Patty Mills, Danny Green, Tiago Splitter, Marco Bellinelli, and Boris Diaw. 58.5 help points. And finally, LeBron James. For Hall of Famers, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and Kyrie Irving will all be Hall of Famers. For All-Stars, we have Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Mo Williams, and Kevin Love. And for good players, Carlos Boozer, Ricky Davis, Jeff McGinnis, Drew Gooden, Larry Hughes, Ronald Murray, Daniel Gibson, Delonte West, Anderson Varejao, a very out-of-prime Shaq, Anton Jameson, Udonis Haslem, Mario Chalmers, Ray Allen, Shane Battier, J.R. Smith, Timothy Mozgov, Tristan Thompson, Kyle Korver, Jordan Clarkson, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Rajon Rondo, and JaVale McGee. That would be a total of 49 help points. So for help points, Russell would come in first with 75, then we have Kareem and Kobe, then Wilt, Duncan, LeBron, Magic, and finally MJ. So we will finally end with every player's resume, which will be the 3 biggest standout things from each player's career in comparison to each other. With Bill Russell, being an 11-time champion is #1 on his resume, being second in rebounding and blocks is second, and third is him having 5 MVP awards. For Wilt, being first in blocks and rebounds, having 4 MVPs, and having the highest prime averages are the things at the top of his resume. With Kareem, 6 championships, 6 MVPs, and being what will be second all-time in points. Magic has 5 rings, he would have been first all-time in assists, and he has 3 MVP awards. Bird has 3 rings, 3 MVPs, and he's 5th in prime and regular points per game. Jordan has 6 rings, 5 MVPs, and he was 2nd in prime points per game and tied for 1st in career points per game. Kobe has 5 championships, tied for 3rd in prime points per game, and he is 4th all-time in scoring. Duncan has 5 rings, 2 MVPs, and he is top 10 in both rebounds and blocks. And for LeBron's resume, he will be 1st all-time in points, he has 3 championships, and 4 MVPs. With all of this in consideration, with every achievement, every moment, every number and championship listed out in front of you, with all of its context, with everything out on the table, who is the GOAT? Well, I don't know. There is no clear answer, no clear definition. To some, winning is all that matters. If that's the case, then Bill Russell might be your GOAT. To others, championships are a team accomplishment. To others, basketball is a team sport, so championships are a team accomplishment, and they don't matter that much for a player's legacy. If that's your opinion, then LeBron James or Wilt Chamberlain might be your GOAT. Maybe you look for a healthy mix of both, then your GOAT would probably be MJ or Kareem. Maybe you love a team player, in that case your GOAT would be Magic Johnson or Tim Duncan. Maybe it's all about the moments for you, then your GOAT could be Kobe Bryant or Larry Bird. There is no formula for determining who is the greatest of all time. It's subjective. So, to end this documentary, I haven't used the word I for the entirety of this 2.5 hour long video. But to end this video, I would just like to say, appreciate greatness. You can think that MJ is the GOAT without disrespecting LeBron James, and vice versa. Every player that I put in this video is a legend and should be treated as such. Regardless of who you pull for, choosing to hate the opposition is an ugly habit that we as humans need to stop doing. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. To show that you've made it this far, please comment appreciate greatness down below. And also, if you aren't subscribed already and you've made it this far, I think I've earned your subscription at this point, and I will end this video the way I end every other video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.